Chapter 510. Kagaya's pretty face was livid. Seeing Dustless being so unscrupulous and frivolous, she condensed a chakra fluctuation that was enough to shatter a mountain with her other hand. Kagaya was the ancestor of chakra. In the era where she lived, there was no concept of techniques. Any technique could be easily grasped. Are you sure you want to touch me? I'll just hug you like this. Dustless had a shameless look. His hands wrapped around Kagaya's waist and pulled her into his embrace. He deeply inhaled Kagaya's unique body fragrance and was addicted to it. Smack! The curvy body aroused Dustless's evil fire. Now that Kagaya was pregnant, Dustless couldn't force her to the ground and force himself on her. He could only stand and take advantage of her verbally. Dustless's lips were left on Kagaya's face with some water stains. Lecher! Kagaya clenched her teeth. She had never felt that Dustless was so hateful. Although he was shameless enough in the past, it was much better than his current shameless appearance. The majestic chakra that was condensed in her hand suddenly disappeared. Her eyes looked at the void in front of her indifferently. Her hostility was also restrained, as if she had acquiesced to Dustless's frivolity. How can Sun Wukong fight against Buddha? He is still my meal, Kagaya. Dustless gently blew a breath of hot air into Kagaya's ear. He was extremely pleased with himself. In such a short distance, Dustless would definitely be affected by such an unscrupulous attack. So would Kagaya. The young and fragile life in her belly would be annihilated by the impact of the energy wave. Although Dustless's method was extremely despicable, it could be seen that Kagaya had feelings for the child in her belly. At the very least, she wouldn't hurt her. Her tight heart relaxed. Dustless was actually testing her. In fact, there's no need to fight and kill all day. You and I have already done it as husband and wife. Now we even have a child. There is no need to hunt me down. I am a father of the child. Dustless released Kagaya's hands and said sternly. Hearing this, Kagaya just sneered. This child has nothing to do with you. You are just an unrelated outsider, and your future surname is Otsutsuki, not Uchiha. That's all. From the beginning to the end, she had never admitted that this child was related to Dustless. The so-called father was just his wishful thinking. That's not up to you. Hearing that, Wu Chun just smiled. Blood was thicker than water, and it was impossible for Kagaya to change it. The blood that flowed in her bones was a fact that could not be violated. This kind of thing could not be erased forever. It seems that it will take a while. Glancing at Kagaya's belly, Dustless secretly calculated in his heart. The belly is only slightly bulging. According to the normal human pregnancy cycle, it will take at least a few months for the child to be born. Dustless's eyes flashed with a strange light. It's really difficult to tame this wild horse. In the past, he could completely ignore the existence of Kagaya and let her do whatever she wants. But now he can't use the original method. It's not up to me. Hearing this, Kagaya sneered again and again, and her white eyes overflowed with cold light. Her whole body overflowed with powerful cold air, and the whole room turned into an iceberg in an instant. Everything in the room was destroyed, and only Kagaya and Dustless stood still. His skinny figure stood still like a rock that couldn't be moved. He just stood there quietly like that. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well and were abnormally calm. They were so deep that they sparkled like black agates. From beginning to end, her expression was so relaxed and indifferent. Hateful. Seeing this, Kagaya's beautiful face surged with an even stronger baleful aura, and she pounced on Dustless. The ferocious baleful aura even caused the space around Dustless to distort. This is the goddess of Uno, Kagaya. Her strength is tyrannical, and there are no techniques in her eyes. The so-called techniques are created at will. In the distorted space, a strong suction force shot out, tried to twist Dustless into pieces. Because the force was too strong, the dust particles on the ground strangely floated up and uncontrollably drilled into the distorted dark space. Dustless's handsome face didn't change like a sculpture. His hands were in front of him, and he let Kagaya cast her technique. His tall and straight posture didn't move, nor did he run away, nor did he make any defense. Even so, Dustless's feet were connected to everything in the world. No one could devour him, and no one could shake him. Seeing this scene, Kagai's expression was in a trance. She didn't know when the gap between her and Dustless had become so big. Kagai, with your level, you will never be able to shake me. Staring at the slightly depressed Kagai, Dustless said the truth. In the Naruto world, Dustless and Kagai were at the same stage. Coming to this world, Dustless's strength was slowly improving, but Kagai, who had been imprisoned in the system world, didn't improve her strength. Instead, her strength regressed for some reason. According to Dustless's speculation, it should be related to the baby in her belly. It seemed that the baby in her belly was hungry for her chakra. What was touching was that Kagai didn't cut off the connection with chakra because of this. I remember I told you before, don't try to resist fate. Since you swallowed the fruit of the divine tree, all the curses started. If you didn't swallow the fruit of the divine tree back then, there wouldn't be such karma today. Now, you have become my possession. This is not an accident, but fate. The sonorous and powerful sound resounded through the room, and the powerful airwaves spread. The wooden hut that had been frozen by Kagai's killing intent collapsed in an instant, and warm sunlight shone in. Dustless's eyes were locked on the slightly sluggish Kagai, and he declared his sovereignty to her overbearingly. Remember this clearly. I don't want to repeat this sentence a third time. There is only one master in this world, and his name is Uchiha Dustless. Chapter 511. Where there is a cause, there is an effect. This is a principle that does not change. Kagai swallowed the fruit of the divine tree and obtained the power to destroy the world. Dustless was ambitious and also wanted the power to make thousands of creatures fear. Therefore, it was destined that the two of them would have a cycle of cause and effect. Kagai was destined to become Dustless's possession. No one could be at ease in the face of a heavenly treasure like the divine tree. Dustless's words immediately angered Kagai. The dignified goddess of Mao, a god above the pyramid, was treated as an object by Dustless. How could Kagai not be angry? Especially when Dustless looked like he was going to eat her, it made her feel particularly uncomfortable. Eating 5 kilograms was not as uncomfortable as this. Facts speak louder than words. I'm just stating the facts. There's no need to be so angry. Dustless raised his eyelids and looked at Kagai. Kagai's eyes were filled with fire. The more indifferent Dustless was, the angrier she was. Although Dustless's words were a bit harsh, and he did not care about Kagai's face, this was an undeniable fact. The current Kagai no longer had the strength to threaten him. Especially when chakra was swallowed by the fetus in her belly, her strength was not as strong as before. Facts? What a big tone. Glaring at Dustless, Kagai said with murderous intent, being lectured by a brat who was thousands of years younger than her, in such unpleasant words, even with Kagai's magnanimity, she could not tolerate it. Moreover, she was not so magnanimous that she could accept Dustless's ridicule. Most women were petty, especially Dustless, who was the person she hated the most. Chakra burst out like a flash flood. The horrifying density was close to liquid. As the ancestor of chakra, the amount of chakra in Kagai's body was beyond imagination. Even though most of the chakra in his body had already been swallowed up by the life in his body, the chakra that was gushing out was still as vast and boundless as the ocean. Above the horizon, a boundless energy tide formed. Purple light filled the entire void, and even the blue sky was covered by the purple light. The light shining on the ground also changed from blue to purple. Everyone's chakra color is different. For example, Uchiha Madara's chakra is dark blue, Dustless's chakra is golden, and Kagai's is golden. Sure enough, every time we meet, a fierce battle is inevitable. Dustless's face was full of helplessness. He thought that he would be able to survive this time, but he didn't expect it to be the same as before. Her cold eyes circled around Dustless. Kagai's voice was no longer as cold as before, and there was some gentleness in it, making Dustless see the warm dawn of dawn. Looking at Dustless for a moment, Kagai's eyes flashed with a strange color. She had to admit that if there was only one choice for a spouse, Dustless in front of her was the most suitable. It was barely perfect. The only thing that made her unbearable was that Dustless's arrogant and unquestionable character and tone often gave Kagai such an illusion. In front of Dustless, even if it was a god, he had to lower his head and obey his orders obediently. "Let me surrender to you." White eyes filled with determination, Kagai made up her mind to end things with Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless's body froze, and then his eyes widened, looking at Kagai incredulously. Instinctively, he thought that this speech was a conspiracy. There is no such thing as a free lunch in the sky. When did the fierce goddess of Uno take the initiative to come to the door? Don't misunderstand, I also have a condition. Seeing that Dustless's thoughts went astray, Kagai immediately pulled Dustless's thoughts back. Want her to come to the door directly? Don't be wishful thinking. Dustless frowned slightly, and his gaze became sharp, penetrating the heavy void and landing on Kagai's body. It was incomparably cold, as if he wanted to see through her true thoughts. However, Kagai was covered in a mysterious veil and was wrapped in thick chakra, blocking Dustless's prying. There's no harm in saying it. After thinking for a while, Dustless no longer hesitated and signaled Kagai to directly state her conditions. This heroic tone, as well as that thick confidence, as well as the confidence to be able to remain calm in the face of everything, made Kagai's brows knit together. Staring at Dustless, who had a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, she heavily snorted. "As long as you can withstand 80% of my strength in my current state and withstand 3 of my moves without moving, I will follow you wherever you go." Meeting Dustless's gaze, Kagai clenched her teeth. After saying that, Kagai's eyes stared fixedly at Dustless. As long as he retreated in the slightest and avoided her gaze, it meant that Dustless didn't have the courage, and his previous bold words were all empty words. However, she was destined to be disappointed. Dustless's expression didn't change from beginning to end. Not only did he not show any signs of retreating, the corner of his mouth raised into the long-awaited smile. "What's so funny?" Glaring angrily at Dustless, Kagai asked unkindly. She was serious, but Dustless's smile was perfunctory. "Of course it's funny. You took the initiative to come to the door for me to enjoy. How can I not be happy?" Looking at Kagai, Dustless's mouth raised a smile of success. It seems that the previous excessive words had a good effect. Kagai's angry look was within his expectations. If you want to make her collapse, you must first make her crazy. Since Kagai has made a move, Dustless certainly can't back down. The smile on his face quickly disappeared, and his thumb pointed to the ground under his feet, and a powerful roar resounded through the sky. "Don't save your strength, just bring out your full strength. As long as you can make my feet move a little bit, I, Dustless Uchiha, will lose, and from then on, you can fly as high as you want." The unruly voice was like rolling thunder, reaching people's ears, making them dizzy. Hearing this, Kagai couldn't help but look at Dustless in astonishment. That unprecedented confidence, even she was affected. Chapter 512. Kagai stared at Dustless. Her white eyes seemed to want to pierce through Dustless. She was really puzzled. Where did this confidence come from? After a short moment of daze, it was replaced by a murderous look. There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you want to throw yourself into it. You deserve to be killed. Seeing Dustless looking down on her, Kagai sneered and looked at him coldly. Maybe she really wasn't Dustless's opponent, but forcing Dustless to move his feet was still very easy for her. Killed? That's still too far away from me. If you have the ability to kill me, you can try. Shaking his head slightly, Dustless signaled Kagai to bring it on. Looking at Kagai calmly, Dustless's feet went deep into the ground and were connected to the whole earth. His hands were relaxed in front of him, and he was abnormally calm. His eyes were fixed on Kagai. Now was the best time to tame this arrogant wild horse. Dustless naturally wouldn't let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Could it be that this guy can? Dustless's confidence immediately aroused a woman's suspicious nature. Kagai's heart couldn't help but be filled with fanciful thoughts. Suddenly, she remembered Dustless's elemental transformation that could ignore all physical attacks. Her delicate face froze. Don't worry, I naturally won't use elemental transformation. It's all based on my true ability. Seeing Kagai's worries, Dustless chuckled and gave her a look that said there was no need to worry. Seeing this, Kagai was silent. She wanted to speak, but couldn't say anything. Because elemental transformation was one of Dustless's many abilities, it was also considered a true ability that could easily dodge all attacks. Saying that he would give up using this ability that could allow him to dodge all attacks, the shock it brought to Kagai was indescribable. This is your own choice. I didn't force you. Looking deeply at Dustless, Kagai said in a deep voice. Her impression of Dustless finally changed. However, Dustless's next sentence made the remaining good impression in Huey's heart vanish. You didn't force me? It must be you who forced me to do this. If you didn't push your luck, how could I be standing here as a live target for you? Dustless said seriously as he stared at Huey's face. There was a deep sense of helplessness and a headache on his face. It was obvious that he wanted to push all the blame onto Kagaya. Kill gray bones together. The cold light gathered in his white eyes, and then the ferocious blue veins bulged on both sides of his eyes. Wu Chen's acupoints were exposed under his eyelids. He aimed at the most vulnerable position, and the overflowing bone spur in his hand shot out directly. The cold white light was unstoppable. Anything that came into contact with it was instantly annihilated. Due to its overwhelming power, ripples appeared in the void as it passed by. This woman is so ruthless. Dustless clicked his tongue when he saw Kagai's first move was so ruthless. This technique killed gray bones together. Dustless was as clear as a mirror. Anyone who came into contact with it would die, and not even their bones would be left behind. Such a blatant killing intent. There was no love between husband and wife. However, since Kagai had already made her move, Dustless would not back down. If he did not tame this arrogant woman, he would never be able to control her in the future. A very strong technique, it looks very sharp. It must be good to use it to cut fruits. Dustless said calmly as he looked at Kagai with a chuckle. Kagai, who had lived for thousands of years, was unparalleled in her wisdom. She immediately chose to counterattack and said coldly, I hope you won't be cut open by the fruit knife in your mouth. With a groan, Kagai no longer paid attention to Dustless. The veins at the corner of her eyes bulged as she locked onto Dustless's footsteps. As long as he moved a little, Dustless would lose. Cut open my stomach? It's still a long way from that. The void behind Dustless suddenly emitted a dazzling golden brilliance. It was so dazzling that Kagai subconsciously stretched out her snow-white wrist to block in front of her eyes. Through the weak gap between her fingers, she looked at the changes in front. This is, after a while, Kagai, who noticed that the light had weakened, withdrew her arm and looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. For a moment, her mind stopped thinking. In the void behind Wu Chun, there were countless divine weapons floating in the sky. The number was so dense that it was dazzling and overwhelming. Every weapon was polished and tempered thousands of times. It was a work of the gods and could be called a peerless divine weapon. But Kagai's gaze was focused on the odachi in Dustless's hand. Pa, pa, pa. In the clear sky, the crackling sound of lightning suddenly sounded. The suppressed roar made people feel despair and fear involuntarily. Looking up, the blood-colored lightning was clearly visible. It gradually became larger and extended. This blade is called the first-generation Ghost Blade. It is an ominous blade and the strongest demon blade in the world. Dustless touched the vicissitudes, texture of the scabbard, and said with emotion, Hawkeye's Black Blade Knight did not have the existence of demon aura. Although it was also one of the 12 supreme Wazai techniques, the powerful demon aura of the first-generation Ghost Blade was much more difficult to control than that of Night. In normal times, Dustless threw the first-generation ghost blade into the gate of Babylon. Clang! Pa, pa, pa! The crisp sound of steel rang out as the first-generation ghost blade was slowly unsheathed. The more the sharp blade was unsheathed, the thicker and more terrifying the blood-colored lightning in the sky became, and the larger the area of the lightning became. When the entire blade was exposed to the air, the sky was already covered with blood-colored lightning, like a sea of lightning. On the other hand, Wu Qin's entire temperament had changed drastically. His deep eyes had turned blood red, and his entire body was covered in a purplish-black mist. That powerful and almost materialized demonic aura made one's scalp go numb. "It's over, Kagai." Dustless's voice fell. The first-generation ghost blade in his hand was raised, and a huge blood-red light whizzed out from the tip of the blade. The void along the way was directly torn and crushed by the powerful sword pressure. In the blink of an eye, the bone spur that rushed over was swallowed, and the two disappeared between heaven and earth at the same time. The only thing that proved their existence was the sky that was torn by the sword pressure. Chapter 513. The long and narrow space that was torn apart showed jagged marks as if it was bitten by a shark. On the other side, the dark space went straight to the depths of the universe, and the whole shot out a terrifying, devouring force. Fortunately, this was a small space in the system. The space was weak and abnormally fragile compared to the outside world. The outside world absolutely could not tear the void so easily. Ka-ka-ka! The remaining energy fluctuations in the air had not yet dissipated. While the void cracks were being repaired, they were immediately pulled apart by this tyrannical force. This cycle repeated again and again, and the scene was even more terrifying. How is it? The demonic blood light seeped out from behind Dustless, and the scarlet eyes floated out a faint blood mist. The corner of his mouth was slightly raised, and Dustless, who was holding the first-generation ghost blade, gave a particularly gloomy feeling. His whole body seemed to be soaked in a blood pool, and the smell of blood assailed the nostrils. Deep in the clouds, the blood lightning gathered on the ground, and the entire system world showed a decay and collapse. It seems that this world is also a wonderful place where the strong gather. Cautiously looking at the blood lightning in the void, Huey G said with a little yearning, "The unknown world, the top strong." This was the biggest temptation for Huey G. The first move is over, there are still two more. The smell of blood came head-on. Looking up, it was Dustless who was holding the first-generation ghost blade. The bloody light draped over his back, and there was no human emotion in his cold eyes. The ground under Wu Qin's feet had been eroded to the point that it was unbearable to look at. It had turned black. The surface of the ground had died forever, and there was no possibility of revival. "Don't be complacent." Eyes locked on Dustless, Huey G warned fiercely. The cold air that floated out of the thin lips could freeze the air, and the condensed ice fell to the ground, adding a little gloominess. Huey G's face was hazy with a transparent cold mist, and her pale face was even more terrifying. From a beginning to the end, under the inside of the abnormal ability of Byakugan, she clearly saw that Dustless's feet did not move at all. "It seems to me that you're regretting it out of humiliation," Dustless asked with a smile when he saw Huey G's terrifying expression. He then raised two fingers and shook them at Huey G. "There are still two moves left. If you beg me, I can go easy on you. After all, a day as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. I can reluctantly give you some face." Seeing Dustless's actions, Huey's face turned ashen. She opened her mouth to retort, but she was speechless. The cruel reality made her feel extremely powerless. Dustless glanced at Kagaya and said in a hoarse voice, "That's the difference between you and me. The world is huge, but you're still immersed in the bubble of the goddess of Uno. Everything in the past has already gone with the wind. The universe was so vast that even Dustless himself was nothing more than an insignificant grain of sand, let alone Huey. You have a sharp tongue. I didn't expect you to be so good at talking as well. You're really impressive. Glaring at Dustless, Huey mocked. Ka ka ka. Her thin and weak body shook, and the spatial ability of Yumazka was activated. Kagaya's lips curled into a smug smile, and then she withdrew into it. Seeing this, Dustless frowned slightly. His nerves tightened, and his vast perception spread out in all directions. Within a radius of several kilometers, he did not miss even the slightest movement. This technique was strange and unpredictable. It was mysterious beyond imagination. Wu Chun couldn't perceive where it would appear. He could only use his spirit to defend passively. No matter where you hide, your final target will always be me. After a long while, Dustless, who had not found any trace of Huey, said in a hoarse voice that resounded through the void, accompanied by a gust of wind that spread to every corner of the sky. Ka ka ka. The space in front of him suddenly exploded, and Huey, who was wielding a bone knife, flashed out of thin air. She appeared in front of Dustless like a ghost, and a sharp cold light came down. The power that was enough to disintegrate mountains and rivers was about to dismember Dustless. Launching an unexpected attack was indeed difficult to deal with. He could take advantage of the opportunity to catch the enemy off guard. Even so, Wu Chun, who entered his sight, was surprisingly calm. His eyes were as still as stagnant water without any ripples. A dazzling golden luster burst out from his body, and a strange three-headed and six-armed Buddha statue suddenly appeared, covering and protecting Dustless's body. Clang! In just a short time, the powerful three-headed and six-armed Buddha statue easily grabbed Huey's bone blade. The power was so great that even if Huey gathered all the strength in her body, she couldn't pull out the bone blade. Moreover, this strange three-headed and six-armed Buddha statue showed no signs of decay or collapse. Huey's eyes widened, and she was speechless. Facing Dustless, or rather, his countless trump cards, Huey G was already immune to them. However, facing this strange and ugly golden Buddha statue with fangs and a monstrous face, she couldn't help but fall into a daze. There's no need to be surprised. This is just an improved miniature Kinsusinu based on the complete Kinsusinu. The appearance of the body is much smaller, but the power it exerts is more powerful than the original complete body. Concentration is the essence, Dustless said in an extremely casual tone. After saying that, his gaze fell on Huey's delicate body. Looking at her, who didn't move, Dustless chuckled and said, "What's her last move? Or are you already at your wit's end and plan to wash yourself clean and send yourself to me?" Unlike before, Huey showed a gentle smile in the face of Dustless's teasing this time, which made people feel like they were bathed in the spring breeze. Dustless was slightly stunned when he saw this. He frowned and looked at the abnormal Huey, trying to find a flaw in her body. Just as he was about to speak, her pleasant voice sounded first. "The third move has been launched." As Huey's light voice fell, a dazzling white light suddenly shot down from the sky. Dustless, who didn't feel it, subconsciously looked at the dazzling light in the sky. After a while, his pupils suddenly turned pale, and he became a walking corpse. Chapter 514. It turned out that the black and white eye socket had also undergone earth-shaking changes. It turned into a lavender eye, and circles of black ripples spread out. It was simple and mysterious. It was the legendary Supreme Eye Rinnegan. The dazzling white light was extremely terrifying, and its penetrating ability was extremely powerful. Anyone who was illuminated by this white light all showed the same eyes as Dustless and became a walking corpse. It covered the world of the entire system, and everything in the world had nowhere to hide. Looking up, the moon tens of thousands of miles away turned into a bloody Rinnegan Sharingan, which coincided with the shape of the Rinnegan Sharingan between Kagaya's eyebrows. It was extremely strange. Her proud gaze fell on Dustless. Seeing that he was already a walking corpse, Huey G's smile was like a beautiful woman, and her limpid eyes surged with joy. She had been suppressed by Dustless for a long time, and her resentment had been accumulated for a long time. Now that Dustless was controlled by infinite Tsukuyomi, her whole body seemed to be floating in the depths of the clouds, extremely light. With a gentle and elegant step, she crossed the layers of space and instantly came in front of Dustless. Even if Kagaya was as cold as snow, the smile on her face could not be concealed. At the moment when infinite Tsukuyomi illuminated the world, all creatures were in my bag, and you are no exception. There is no invincible trick in the world. You were too confident, but you were too careless. This is the root cause of your failure. Quietly looking at the handsome face close to her, Kagaya's frown and smile were full of charm. She didn't care if Dustless could hear her, and said with emotion, thinking of how he had been suppressed by Wu Chun and how miserable he had been, and now looking at Wu Chun who had lost his soul, he felt particularly relieved. It ends here. Her gaze swept past Dustless, who was caught in the infinite dream. The moment Kagaya turned around and was about to leave, a thin but extremely stable arm hugged her waist and took her into his arms. Kagaya was stunned and immediately looked back. As you said before, there is no invincible technique in the world. I was too careless, Kagaya. An abnormally calm voice sounded from his throat. The person who spoke was none other than Dustless, who had fallen into infinite Tsukuyomi. Dustless suddenly broke free from infinite Tsukuyomi. Kagaya didn't seem to have come back to her senses for the time being. She just looked at him in shock. A pair of relatively warm hands took advantage of the gaps and skillfully invaded the Taoist robe. Huey, who was in a daze, noticed the small hands that wandered around her chest. She then stared fiercely at Dustless. Is the goddess of Uno trying to go back on her word? His words left Kagaya speechless. She could only stare at Dustless. Living in the ancient era, her thoughts were restricted by the ancients. The principles of poetry and etiquette were deeply ingrained in her bones. I will naturally abide by the previous agreement. But how did you escape the nightmare created by infinite Tsukuyomi? Ignoring the small hands in her arms, Kagaya looked at Dustless with a look of curiosity. Seeing this scene, in line with the principle of not taking advantage of a bastard, Dustless became even more unscrupulous. It's very simple, because my Rinnegan Sharingan is above infinite Tsukuyomi. Its light can't penetrate me. Dustless explained casually. Dustless has many ways to fight against infinite Tsukuyomi. He sees Sasuke's Rinnegan, so naturally, he wasn't afraid of infinite Tsukuyomi. In addition, Dustless's Rinnegan Sharingan is comparable to Kagaya's. Since you can use infinite Tsukuyomi, why are you trapped in it? Are you insulting me? Staring at Dustless, Kagaya asked coldly. At the same time, she hit the small hands in her lapel. Are you sure you want me to say it? Reluctantly retracting his arm and shrugging, Dustless explained softly, it's very simple. When the enemy is complacent and thinks that victory is assured, it's more interesting to jump out and tease her. After saying that, Dustless looked at Kagaya with interest. He thought that she would go berserk on the spot, but unexpectedly, she was extremely calm. It's undeniable that you won. With a flash of sadness in her eyes, Huey's frosty voice softened. It was no longer as unapproachable as before, and there was a rare hint of approval. It seems that she acquiesced to the relationship with Dustless. While talking, Dustless also came over, and then gently touched Kagaya's belly, carefully feeling the changes in her fragile life. Lowering her head, her white eyes observed Dustless. A hint of surprise flashed in Kagaya's eyes, and she sighed quietly. She didn't stop Dustless's action. Her peerless face became gentler, and she was no longer as cold as the snow lotus. Kagaya could feel that Dustless was sincere, at least for the child in her belly, and there was no ugly hypocrisy. In order to obtain power that surpassed others, it was common to kill one's own flesh and blood. No matter how times have changed, there were countless of them. Kagaya thought too much. Dustless was not such a person at all, or it could be said that he didn't care about such methods at all. At that moment, the resistance in her heart towards him decreased a lot. Humans are not plants. How can they be emotionless? As a parent, they only care about their offspring. Kagaya, could empathize. A monster that can devour chakra. Kagaya's face was strange, and then she shook her head in puzzlement. Dustless was also confused. The fetus in Kagaya's belly was more like a monster made of chakra. It was just pure energy that was endowed with life, and its flesh and blood was completely made of chakra. And Dustless could sense his own chakra. How can a body of flesh and blood be a monster? You're so ignorant. Although you're strong, your knowledge is shallow. You're just a layman. Kagaya scolded in dissatisfaction, secretly scolding Dustless. You're blaming me. Dustless smiled embarrassedly, and his head was full of black lines. He was extremely speechless. Continuously devouring chakra was a fantasy, especially when it happened to a fetus that was still in the process of being born. It was even more unreasonable. Chapter 5:15. Dustless responded with a wry smile and was extremely speechless. He didn't refute Kagaya's words and smiled casually. He knew Kagaya's character. She was cold and indifferent, but she was warm inside. Even if she didn't like Dustless now, she was sincere about the fetus in her belly. Unconsciously, Dustless also had a touch of jealousy for the fetus in Kagaya's belly. Gently caressing her slightly bloated belly, a gentle smile appeared on Huey's cold face. It was a smile that was simple yet sincere. It was like the warm sun in the spring of March, mesmerizing people. Of course, the object of the smile was not Dustless. After a sweet chuckle for a while, her eyes fell on Dustless, and the smile suddenly disappeared. Although she was not as cold as before, her attitude towards Dustless was still quite cold. By the way, every time you come in without being asked, what do you want? Kagaya asked with a little curiosity as her eyes turned around Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless's mouth twitched without a trace. Entering the system world, it's not a lottery, of course. It's a slap, slap, slap. Let's be clear, this is my territory, and it's my freedom to come and go. Dustless rolled his eyes and snorted. Kagaya just glanced at Dustless faintly. Her expression was a little unnatural, and she was too lazy to expose Dustless's ridiculous trick. In Kagaya's perception, every time he enters the system world, it's not a good thing. It will probably take a few more months. Looking at his slightly bloated and slightly protruding lower abdomen, Wu Chun calculated. It will take about 5 or 6 months before the day of birth. This is only the most conservative estimate. It's not impossible to delay for a while. After all, Kagaya is not a normal human being. Her strength is extraordinary. If she erupts with all her strength, the whole world is not enough for her to toss. Looking at Kagaya deeply, Dustless was about to leave, but her voice came in advance. This child's surname will be Otsutsuki, and he will have nothing to do with the Uchiha. Kagaya said firmly. Her words were full of disdain for the Uchiha, and there was a hint of warning. Dustless frowned slightly, but he did not refute. He only said indifferently, "What do you mean by this? Are you threatening me?" Dustless's pitch-black eyes flashed with a touch of hostility. All those who had threatened him had already stepped onto the path to heaven. In this life, Dustless hated those who overestimated themselves and tried to threaten him. The Uchiha clan is just a branch of the Otsutsuki clan. It is more appropriate for my children to be named Otsutsuki, that's all. Looking at Dustless lightly, Kagaya said softly. When she said the words, "this concubine's child," her expression was especially kind. Dustless frowned tightly when he heard this. Although what Kagaya said was very reasonable, he still felt that it was unreasonable. When he was about to open his mouth to refute, he remembered her current subtle identity and shut his mouth. A good man does not fight with a woman, especially now that she is still waiting to give birth. The truth is always said by the person with the bigger fist. It is useless to say more now. It is just a waste of breath. I didn't expect you to be so eloquent, Kagaya. Dustless glanced at Kagaya blankly and said coldly. In fact, whether the surname is Uchiha or Otsutsuki, Dustless really doesn't care. The only thing that makes it difficult for him to accept is the command and threat in Kagaya's tone, which aroused the flame in his heart. After you give birth to the child, then? Umph. Dustless looked around at Kagaya's curvy body and smiled evilly. There are many ways to take revenge on others. It is not necessary to make her surrender by force. Choosing the way that Kagaya hates the most to take revenge on her will make her feel good, mercilessly trampling on the dignity that she is proud of until she screams and begs for mercy. This is what Dustless wants. Eloquent? I learned this from you. Glancing at Dustless, Kagaya smiled proudly. In the past countless confrontations, Kagaya has failed, and she can't even gain the slightest advantage in words. Boring and vulgar. People like you always like to think that you are smart, and you have lived for thousands of years. Without waiting for Kagaya to answer, Dustless's body began to slowly fade, and his aura gradually disappeared. His whole body glowed with a bright golden luster, and then disappeared from the system world forever. The damage caused by the previous fight was also slowly repaired, and the infinite Tsukuyami, covering the world, also disappeared as if nothing had happened, and everything returned to normal. Somewhere on an island in a new world. Damn, Kaido, don't think it's over. The fat man stared at the distant sea, murderous, and his eyes turned scarlet. His eyes were full of messy blood vessels like spider webs. Looking closely, he is the focus of this time, Gecko Moria. On the surface of the sea in the distance, there were a large number of ship fragments, as well as many corpses and sea kings. Fresh blood dyed the entire surface of the sea crimson. Large sea kings heard the news and came over, their stomachs rumbling with hunger as they tore apart the floating corpses. Most of these people are Gecko Moria's crew. The strength of 100 Beast Kaido is beyond imagination, whether it is the fleet or himself. He almost crushed Gecko Moria's pirates and Moria's self-esteem with a crushing posture. Defeat is like a landslide. Without accidents, the possibility of him rising in the future is almost zero. Bastard, this blood debt must be repaid 10 times. His pupils suddenly enlarged several times. Gecko Moria gritted his teeth and roared to the sky. The murderous aura solidified the surrounding air, and the sharp screams of ghosts could be faintly heard. The current Gecko Moria is not as cold and ruthless as he will be in the future. He still cares about his companions today. They are companions who have been together for more than 10 years, or even longer. Now that 70% of them have been annihilated by Kaido, how can he not be angry? A pirate's temper is irritable. Revenge is their nature, and cruelty is their true portrayal. Chapter 516. In this pirate world, 90% of the area is filled with the sea. Being a pirate can be said to be a uniquely bright future profession. In the spacious and never-changing villa, there are only 2 people, Dustless and White Zetsu. That little rascal Law is really desperate. Corazone's death was a big blow to him. He trained himself without any regard for his own life. His fearless appearance is really shameful. White Zetsu, whose whole body was monotonous white, reported truthfully. Every once in a while, White Zoo would report the key targets that Dustless paid attention to, as well as the areas of activity, to him in full detail. People like Law are even more important to Dustless. After all, the operation involved immortality surgery. Even if Dustless can achieve longevity, the women he gets along with day and night can't do it. What are the motives of Hawkeye and Doflamingo? With his eyes closed, Dustless asked casually. For these 2 people, Dustless is not worried. Hawkeye is the kind of person with a noble temperament. The probability of betrayal is 0. Doflamingo is currently holding Dustless's thigh. He is afraid that he can't stick together forever. How can he defect? If he loses the umbrella that Dustless opened for him. Even if Doflamingo is a celestial dragon, the role he can play in front of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, is minimal. Doflamingo is happy to loot the celestial dragon's heavenly gold, and Hawkeye is very idle, helping Caesar build Pluto. White Zetsu replied truthfully, with the protection of Dustless and the halo of his celestial dragon. Doflamingo is a very popular kid. Hawkeye is responsible for protecting Caesar's safety, and other than that, he sleeps with his head covered. By the way, where did Crocodile go? Dustless suddenly asked, and the ridicule in his tone was undisguised. Without thinking about it, he knew that the angry sand crocodile, was hit by Dustless and must be hiding in a corner of the new world, working hard to practice internal strength. Faced with Dustless's godlike strength, he had no other choice but to undergo devilish self-training. Lord Dustless, you guessed wrong this time. Looking at Dustless, White Zoo shook his head. Hearing this, Dustless's indifferent expression finally loosened a little. He asked curiously, shouldn't that kid be bitterly training his strength right now? Don't tell me he's hunting for fun. Dustless did not take advantage of the situation to kill Crocodile back then because he had an unknown purpose. The reason why he used his overwhelming strength to crush Crocodile was to leave an indelible mark in his heart. He hoped that this humiliation would motivate Crocodile to move forward with all his might. Now, it seemed that things would only move in the opposite direction when they reached an extreme. He really seems to have given up on himself now. He is very idle all day, traveling around the world. Shrugging, White Zetsu was also quite surprised by Crocodile's current situation. Perhaps it was because Dustless had given Crocodile too much of a blow. Now, the kid was able to face the future calmly. Dustless frowned tightly and asked calmly, is the kid's goal to play in the Grand Lines Albuston? Thinking of what Crocodile did in the future, Dustless asked. In order to retaliate against himself, he tried to steal and even resurrect Pluton. It is not impossible for him to retaliate. Crocodile was an ambitious man. The ambition in his heart was enough to swallow the sky and devour the earth. When Dustless attacked him, not only did it not beat back the ambition in his bones, but attracted the craziest side of a pirate. In order to achieve his goal, he doesn't care even if the whole world is destroyed. This is not. White Zetsu shook his head again. Thinking of the strange trace of Crocodile's mouth in his mind, White Zetsu frowned and said truthfully, the kid seems to be looking for the traces of the Revolutionary Army recently. Maybe this is just an accident, but the cautious White Zetsu still chose to tell Dustless. He always felt that Crocodile's goal was not so simple. An ambitious person suddenly looked for the traces of the Revolutionary Army along the way. He said that it was a lie to enjoy the flowers and the moon. White Zetsu said that this joke was not funny at all. Revolutionary Army? Hearing this, Dustless lowered his head and pondered. There was a hidden light in his eyes, and he seemed to think of something, and his mouth raised a gloomy smile. It was not normal for Crocodile to know the news of Pluton. No one would tell him such important news. Even if the information was leaked, it would not be his turn. In the second half of the Grand Line, there are many big pirates who are stronger than Crocodile. Maybe the news of King of Hell was deliberately leaked to him by the Revolutionary Army. Wu Chan said in a deep voice with a flash of light in his eyes. Although it is just a personal speculation, Dustless is very sure. Only this can explain why Crocodile knows the origin of Pluton, and he has an unclear relationship with the high level inside the Revolutionary Army. It should be impossible. The Revolutionary Army has no reason to leak such important news of Pluton, but Manchi D. Dolag has been controlled by Dustless a few days ago. White Zetsu said with doubts. Dustless shook his head decisively when he heard the words. The Revolutionary Army has a lot of mouths. Dolag is not the only high-level person. It is a mysterious system that is not weaker than Marine. It is just that there are not as many people as Marine. Maybe it's just for the sake of Crocodile's identity. They are looking for Pluton. After all, he is now one of the 7 warlords of the sea, which is more convenient than the Revolutionary Army. Dustless secretly guessed. Judging from the style of the Revolutionary Army, the probability is very high. However, it's not bad to use you to find Lord of Hell, Wu Chan said in a hoarse voice with a vicious smile. Even though Caesar was secretly developing the Pluto, who would care about an unprecedented warship, using the clown Crocodile to find Pluton. Until the day Pluton is unearthed, he will rob him of Pluton, and by the way, he will tear Crocodile into pieces. Dustless feels that this way of death is quite suitable for him. Chapter 517. New World, somewhere on the calm sea. Due to the dominance of the Yonko, few ships dare to go near this area. This area is the exclusive domain of the Yonko 100 Beast Kaido. If other pirate groups slip away from here, there is only one end, and that is to be brutally sunk. Kaido, who is now at the peak of his power, is so arrogant. He himself belongs to the martial arts faction, and he yearns for war and loves war. On the huge warship, Kaido's strong figure is particularly conspicuous. Unlike the past, Kaido is now gloomy, and his whole body is bursting with a chilling aura, and his murderous aura is almost suffocating. In front of him are some shivering crew members. These people are the elites of Kaido's pirate group, and they're all top powerhouses. Even so, in the face of the almost deified Kaido, there's a fear from the soul. Ka. The sound of bursting suddenly sounded, and the hull was hit by some mysterious energy. The wood chips were like falling snow, and the warship was constantly roaring. Looking up, an invisible wave enveloped the entire ship. Although it was not moving, it gave people the illusion that it was moving. Most of the people were lying on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Their eyes were abnormally dark and empty, losing the color that a normal human should have. They were stunned by some mysterious force. In the center of the deck, Kaido's tall body was obvious. At this moment, he gives people a terrible feeling, like an active volcano that has been dormant for a long time. No one knows when he will suddenly erupt and lead to the consequences of a disaster. Is the news reliable? You should know what the price of lying to me is. Kaido's eyes were more ferocious than a beast's, and he asked suspiciously. Kaido, who had witnessed the rise and fall of the tides for countless years, was very clear about the fleet with many people under his command. There must be spies from other forces involved in it. Not only him, but every large pirate group has other people or secret spies from the government. It is certainly not false information. Even if we have 10 times the courage, we wouldn't dare to lie. A group of people trembled uncontrollably and replied with cold sweat. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear, and they didn't even have the courage to look directly at Kaido. It doesn't seem like he's lying. Seeing this, Kaido nodded in satisfaction. As a captain, he had to maintain a strong deterrence at all times. Although Kaido's appearance gives people the impression that he is a brainless man, in fact, as long as you think about it carefully, a pirate who has spent most of his life on the sea, facing the marine's layers of inescapable net, how can he be a fish in a pond? In the end, Kaido only looked clumsy on the outside, but in reality, he was an extremely meticulous existence. He dares to scheme against me. No, at the same time, he is scheming against the 4 emperors. That Doflamingo really is guts. Kaido raised his thick black eyebrows as he thought to himself. Doflamingo should know the consequences of plotting against the 4 emperors at the same time. Carefully reading the information in his hand, Kaido's face was full of contemplation. The content was about the strange devil fruit during the last election of the Yonko. It was actually a trap set by Doflamingo to deliberately provoke them to fight the Yonko. Have you heard of this Doflamingo? Kaido changed the topic and asked calmly. A group of pirates around Kaido looked at each other and shook their heads. They really didn't pay much attention to this Doflamingo. Doflamingo's bounty was insignificant and didn't attract their attention. Recently, he has been in the limelight, robbing Tenryubito everywhere. It seems that he is the focus, but the strange thing is that the Marine and the government don't seem to dare to touch him. A pirate who had heard of Doflamingo's deeds explained. The Marine doesn't dare to touch him? What kind of backer does that kid have? He dares to have ideas about Tenryubito. Hearing this, Kaido's face was full of surprise, and he asked with a little suspicion. Robbing Tenryubito's heavenly gold is enough, but the Marine and the government don't dare to catch him. 100 Beast Kaido is also familiar with the name of Tenryubito. Looting Tenryubito will attract the attention of the Marine Headquarters Admiral, and Doflamingo's strength can only be regarded as average. The Marine and the government don't dare to touch him. It's certainly not because of strength, but other factors. As a result, the problem is worth investigating. The Marine and the world government seemed to think highly of him. Puzzled, Kaido frowned. A character whose strength is now at the level of an admiral can arouse the scruples of the Marine headquarters. After all, the overall combat effectiveness of the Marine headquarters can directly confront any Yonko. It was indeed inexcusable for him to have misgivings about a nobody. Where is the source of the information? After reading the words on the intelligence, Kaido asked. Hearing this, the crew below suddenly looked stiff, and they lowered their heads, not daring to look directly at Kaido's fierce eyes, and their bodies twitched uncontrollably. Seeing this scene, Kaido disdainfully smacked his lips, and at the same time, he also knew the source of the intelligence. There are so many traitors. It seems that the internal spies need to be cleaned up. Kaido's eyes flashed with a gloomy cold light, and he looked at the rampant Doflamingo and the intelligence, and he has already sentenced him to death. Doflamingo is not afraid of Tenryubito, and Kaido is not afraid of Tenryubito. Tenryubito is in front of him, and he doesn't want to kill him, but Kaido can be sure of one thing. Doflamingo will be afraid of him, whether you have plotted against me or not. You must die. 400 B's Kaido. He doesn't need a reason to clean up other pirates. There are only two choices, surrender or death. Unfortunately, Doflamingo is the one who is going to die. Chapter 518. Mariehua. The imposing buildings in the clouds are looming, like a fairyland on earth, beautiful. Of course, this is just looking at the appearance of Mariehua and ignoring the internal situation. Every day, Mariehua can hear the miserable and painful voices of slaves. The whining of wanting to die makes people have goosebumps all over their body, and the screams of fear reveal unprecedented hatred for Tenryubito. Even so, these slaves living in purgatory can't change the status quo. Mariehua is actually so ugly, with a golden exterior. It's really a foul place that makes people unhappy. In the clouds, a 6 or 7 meter tall figure flashed and appeared. His appearance was extremely ugly, with fangs and a ghost face. He was dressed like a bat and looked extremely strange. Looking closely, it was Gecko Moria who recently joined the Shichibukai. Aware of the miserable and sharp cries for help that came faintly from all around, Gecko Moria was extremely uncomfortable. The hobbies of the Tenryubito, the original inhabitants of Mariehua, are well known. For powerful slaves, especially captains like him, Tenryubito has a unique yearning for them. You guys, the conditions to become Shichibukai can be passed through the Marine headquarters. Why do you want to come to Mariehua? Gecko Moria stopped and asked with a low posture. The black-clothed men who led the way beside him obviously didn't buy Gecko Moria's words, but indifferently said, "Shallow knowledge, Shichibukai, is an organization of great pirates of the world government, and the recognition of the Marine headquarters is just a formality." Several black-clothed men were as cold as ice, and the disgust in their tone was undisguised. Gecko Moria's old face flashed a fierce killing intent when he heard this, and then he thought of the current situation, and the floating cold light in his eyes flashed away. Now, he can only swallow his anger. The pirates of the New World in the past left him alone, and he can't bear it. People under the eaves have to bow their heads. This simple truth, Gecko Moria's life of wandering, is exceptionally clear. He is not an idiot, especially now that he is in Mariehua. It is self-evident what will happen if he falls out with the world government. Perhaps, among the slaves tortured by the celestial dragons, there would be one more great bandit called Moonlight Moria. Just thinking about it made him shiver unconsciously. Glancing at the gathering place of the celestial dragons on the right, Gagwang Moria quickened his pace and accelerated toward the place where the Gorosei, the highest power, was located on the left. No matter how terrible the Gorosei is, they are still human, and the twisted heart of the celestial dragons is beyond imagination. Stop! Suddenly, a voice rang out from the clouds. Then, a hazy shadow walked over. Gecko Moria frowned. He felt uncomfortable staying in a place like Mariehua for a second longer, but seeing that the black-clothed men around him had stopped, he had to do as the Romans did and stood silently. After a few breaths, the hazy shadow gradually turned into reality and was reflected in Moonlight Moria's eyes. He was very young and looked very human. The sudden appearance of the figure gave Moonlight Moria such a feeling. Then, he looked at the man in black beside him from the corner of his eyes, and his expression suddenly became gloomy. These black-clothed men's expressions were extremely respectful, and they were even closer than seeing their own father. Such a tender young man. But he made this group of black-clothed men afraid and even panicked. There is only one kind of person in Mariewa who could do this, the celestial dragons, known as the descendant of the Creator. It's really bad luck. With a black face, Gecko Moria's expression was extremely gloomy. Then these black-clothed men also confirmed Gecko Moria's guess, and they bowed respectfully and said, "Louis South-Saint, Dustless is also a celebrity in Mariewa. He can kill the celestial dragons at will and not be punished. The one in front of him is the only one." Slightly nodding, Dustless's eyes fell straight on Gecko Moria's head, and his light eyes flashed. It seems that he is quite interested in him. A group of black-clothed men saw this and hurriedly said, "This is Gecko Moria, who is about to become one of the 7 warlords of the sea, not your slave." Dustless just shrugged when he heard the words, indicating that he didn't care. However, this sentence made Gecko Moria vomit blood, and the denseness was comparable to a shark's fangs. The fat body was trembling with anger. Gecko Moria, who was full of black lines, was about to attack when a sharp and awe-inspiring gaze suddenly fell on his body. Under this sharpness, Gecko Moria was like a deflated ball, calming down in an instant. A sense of absurdity that he had never felt before roared through Gecko Moria's mind. Like a fat lamb, the owner of the gaze was fierce and strong, a prehistoric super creature that was long enough to crush mountains. A gentle bite of the teeth could crush Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria, who was in a cold sweat, chose to respect instinct, and the cold, killing intent burst out. There was an inexplicable voice in his heart that warned him that as long as he resisted a little, his blood would splatter on the spot. "It's boring." Shaking his head, Dustless didn't expect to meet this big shot for a walk in the morning. He just looked at Gecko Moria a few more times and lost interest in him, brushing past them as air. If you really choose to be a slave, you won't choose such a flashy thing. Want to be a slave? Sorry, you don't deserve it. Fortunately, you didn't get us killed together. Otherwise, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Compared with Gecko Moria, who could still stand firmly, these black-clothed men were even worse. After seeing Dustless disappear, they sat on the ground without any image. Dustless's reputation in Mariewa is actually no different from that of a devil. He gives people the feeling that he is temperamental, killing you maybe just because he is in a bad mood for a while, or he may be like Crocodile, who offended him, and he could laugh it off. Chapter 519. Thousands of words surged in Unwavering Moria's heart. He moved his lips, but he chose to shut his mouth. From the eyes of these black-robed men, he read the meaning of rejoicing. The black-robed man's eyes quietly expressed that he should be grateful that he was not valued. The clenched fists loosened, and Unwavering Moria's heart was complicated. There was a silent pain that was difficult to express. He raised his eyes and stared at the disappearing figure. He wanted to retaliate, but he could not summon the strength to resist. "Bastard, am I not even as good as an ant?" Lowering his head, Unwavering Moria roared in anger. Dustless's contemptuous eyes were more uncomfortable than 10 slaps. Even so, he could only endure it. Mariewa rashly attacked the celestial dragons, and the consequences could be imagined. Unwavering Moria was not an idiot. It was not difficult to guess that the person who just passed by was a giant. At least the black-robed man in front of him and the world government were very wary of him. After a moment of silence, several people began to move again. Moria staggered and disappeared into the fog. The red line, like a peerless divine sword, divided the whole world into 2 halves. Dustless on the top of the mountain quietly overlooked the distant sea. His heart was unusually light and comfortable. From his point of view, looking down at the sea below, the sky and sea 100 kilometers away could be seen. There was a feeling of looking down at the small mountains. The oncoming salty sea breeze was nauseating. It was also mixed with the rotten corpse smell of the Sea King's corpse. It was nauseating. Dustless was just an invisible airwave that separated the disgusting smell. Suddenly, Dustless's eyebrows slightly raised, and his closed eyes were suddenly opened, shooting a deep gaze. White Zetsu, after a while, you seem to like these hide-and-seek games. The inexplicable voice spread out, full of the fluctuations of repulsion. The surrounding mist dispersed. After about a few breaths of time, accompanied by the ka-ka-ka sound of the ground breaking, White Zetsu broke out of the ground. Lord Dustless's perception is as sharp as ever, White Zu exclaimed, his eyes filled with admiration. He had tried his best to conceal his aura and racked his brain for several days to come up with a plan. He did not expect that he would be exposed right under Dustless's nose. Don't use such boring methods in the future. Don't forget who created you. Dustless casually glanced at Baizu and said indifferently, he was the one who created White Zetsu, and Dustless was the one who taught White Zetsu the stealth technique. It was impossible to deceive his perception. Hearing this, White Zu did not deny it. He suddenly felt that his thoughts were laughable and ignorant. It was indeed Dustless who had taught him his skills. What is it? Withdrawing his sight, Wu Chun asked calmly. In the absence of a major event, White Zu would not easily come to him. White Zetsu's frivolous look converged and became extremely solemn. His ability allowed him to devour any human corpse. Therefore, his clones could be found all over the world. In other words, his clones could be found on every island. Therefore, the movements of many great pirates are monitored by White Zetsu. The traces of the Kaido pirates in the New World are very strange, and the motives of their targets are unknown. Thinking of the strange movements of the Kaido pirates, White Zetsu reported. In fact, the movements of the Kaido pirates were received by the world's major forces for the first time. No one can ignore the existence of this behemoth that is strong enough to compete with the Marine headquarters. Any action of the Kaido pirates affects every move of the world. It is even said that the Yonko, for emperors, has become the symbol of this era. Any of their actions would spread across the entire world like a storm. Isn't he living like a prince in the New World? Wu Chen's eyes rippled as he asked curiously. Since his escape from the town of Kaido, most of the time, he has been entrenched in the New World, enjoying the respect of the world. This is his first amazing move since he became a Yonko for emperors. The shock brought by this is unimaginable. The Kaido pirates were all dispatched. Such an exaggerated formation, in addition to showing off his own force, also expressed his confidence in destroying the enemy. His courage is not small. Is he not afraid that other, Yonko, for emperors, will take the opportunity to rob his territory? Baigu's mother is very envious of the island that produces sweets under him. Wu Chun touched his clean chin and said, fighting with Kaido for the island that produces sweets, this reason is too hard to believe. White Zetsu's eyes widened as he expressed his doubts. I'm just guessing. Dustless is too lazy to explain. It sounds like a fantasy, but this is the case. In the past, for the sake of sweets, Big Imam had destroyed many countries and islands. For Big Mama, sweets were everything to her. It's impossible for the whole team to be dispatched. Monitor his target, including the Marine. Wu Chen whispered with a stern look in his eyes. Since the town of Kaitorog escaped from the trial of the pirates, the Marine headquarters headed by Sengoku has been angry. Now the Marines swaggered out, and according to Sengoku's nature, they could only watch him leave. On the other side of Mariewa, as we guessed, the world's strongest creature has been dispatched. In the brightly lit room, the old lady's voice that was full of vigor spread out. 5 figures of different sizes could be clearly seen. Well, Doflamingo, that kid thinks he has great means, but in fact, he is an idiot. The blonde Gorosei sneered, holding a disdainful attitude towards Doflamingo. The other 4 Gorosei also nodded, and they were not interested in Doflamingo. Yes, this time no one can escape from this game, and that man is no exception. Chapter 520. As the highest power in the world, the authority of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, is unquestionable. Their every word, every move, and the slightest movement can lead to great changes in the world. This is the role of absolute power. The world is a chess piece used in their hands to play chess, and the direction of the chess piece is decided by them. Doflamingo, he always thinks that he is the fisherman behind the scenes. In fact, it is just an illusion caused by human nature. He can only blame his vision for being too small and not being able to see the world further away. This is also the inferior nature of human beings. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, with long hair and beard said, his tone full of wisdom, "That guy is too confident in his strength. He can already steal things from under our noses." Pedantic. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, who is most familiar with Dustless, despises. From beginning to end, he has been extremely disgusted with Doflamingo. This guy is not strong, but with his own privileges and his superior wisdom, he can play with everyone wantonly. This stupid idea is really laughable, but he doesn't know that Doflamingo is just a puppet pushed to the front, and the ones who really control everything behind the scenes are the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. The devil fruit that caused the Yonko, for emperors, to fight over was actually from Mariewa, but the 5 of them deliberately let Doflamingo steal it. Otherwise, with Doflamingo's strength, it would be a fool's dream to steal something from Mariewa. They just took the opportunity to use Doflamingo to provoke the fight between the Yonko, for emperors, and now it is the most appropriate to use Kaido's hand to eradicate him. Doflamingo is responsible for the rise and fall of fate, but they can stay out of it, sit on the wall, and choose the most favorable angle to overlook the development of the situation. Kaido is not an idiot. He may not believe our instigation. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, with a scar on his forehead, was deeply suspicious. The Yonko, for emperors, are not idiots. Each of them is an old fox. They have been rolling on the sea for many years and have become a spirit. Indeed, that man is not an easy person to deal with. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, with a hat on his head, also echoed, and the trace of the Kaido pirates this time is really strange. Even if they destroy Doflamingo, it is not worthwhile to dispatch all of them. The strength of the Kaido pirates can compete with the Marine headquarters, but the opponent is only Doflamingo. It's too obvious that they are making a fuss over a minor issue. Moreover, by doing so, it was inevitable that some people would have designs on Kaido's islands. There's no need to be surprised. Everything depends on one's effort. I just added some special information to it. The 5 Elder Stars said with a sinister smile. They were no longer as wise as before. Their eyes were filled with murderous light. I just secretly sent someone to tell 100 Beast Kaido that Doflamingo has the blueprint of Hell King. The other 4-5 Elder Stars sucked in a breath of cold air as his voice fell. They stared at the 5 Elder Stars with their eyes wide open. Their faces were full of astonishment and disbelief. At the same time, they also instantly understood what he meant. It was a top-secret information about ancient weapons. It was reasonable for Kaido to personally take action. Whether the news of Hell King was groundless or there was a reason for it, it was worthy of 100 Beast Kaido to personally take action. For Kaido, one of the 4 emperors who believed in fighting, ancient weapons, which are the ultimate weapons that surpass human understanding, were exactly what he needed at all costs. With such destructive power, his extreme personality, and his love for war, he would definitely not miss such a good opportunity. In this way, it was reasonable for all of them to dispatch all of them. Not only can we use this opportunity to eliminate Doflamingo, we can even use this opportunity to instigate the grudge between Kaido and Roy South. It's not impossible for us to start a war between them, the golden-haired Elder Star said with glowing eyes. Not only were the 5 honored stars extremely powerful, but they were also shrewd. Sometimes, It was more interesting to use wisdom to play with a strong enemy that was not weaker than them in the palm of their hands than simply using force to trample them. Outsiders may not know, but they know that Doflamingo is Dustless's lackey. It is not impossible for the master to stand up for his lackey. That is for sure. That man Kaido hates Royce South. I am afraid that he will be the first target to be bombarded by Hell King. The sword-wielding fifth Elder Star sinisterly laughed, his tone carrying a sense of schadenfreude. When Dustless used illusion to trample on Kaido that day, Kaido's eyes were full of hatred towards Dustless. The five Elder Stars holding the sword were still vivid in their minds. The shadow of Dustless may have been deeply buried in Kaido's heart, leaving a lingering shadow. One thing is certain. If Royce South does not save him, that idiot Doflamingo will be in trouble. The five Elder Stars with blonde hair added. In all fairness, the five of them were extremely dissatisfied with the Celestial Dragons. On the one hand, they used the slogan of absolute justice, and on the other hand, they protected the world's most evil object, the Celestial Dragons. It was tantamount to slapping their own face. The terror of the four emperors was beyond imagination. With Doflamingo's level, he would not even be able to cause a ripple before he was mercilessly killed. Be in terms of individual strength or the strength of the fleet, the difference between the two was like heaven and earth. Isn't this good? The five Elder Stars with long hair and beard said, if the strength of the two sides is maintained at the same level, the direction of the war may be maintained at the same stage. This is not what we want to see. Only when Doflamingo is overwhelmingly defeated, the master who raised him will come out to save this lackey. The other four Elder Stars nodded in agreement. This was the situation they wanted to see. No matter who wins or loses, the final winner would be the world government led by them. All in all, the world government led by them would be the final winner. Whether it was Kaido or Doflamingo, they were actually just chess pieces on the surface. The real players behind the scenes were the five Honored Stars and Wu Chen. They were just competing in a different way, using each other's wisdom to scheme against each other. Who would win was completely dependent on each other's methods. Chapter 521. Four Gorosei, five Elder Stars, playing with a peerless pirate whose strength is not inferior to their own like a clown in the palm of their hand, secretly dominating his will and becoming a chess piece of their own side. This is more fulfilling. Without Dustless's interference, there is no doubt that the menacing Kaido pirates will sweep away the Doflamingo pirates, and the two sides are completely incomparable. Of course, this is the case where Dustless is indifferent to the situation. Otherwise, the situation would be the other way around. There is a price to pay for running amok, and the price this time is precisely Doflamingo's life, so that the mortal flies will not come to find trouble every day. The bald Gorosei, five Elder Stars, with a sword waved impatiently. Doflamingo robbed Tenryubito's heavenly gold, and Mariehua's Tenryubito has put pressure on them many times. This time, if they don't use Kaido's hand to eradicate Doflamingo, I am afraid that there is only one end. Doflamingo will join the Shichibukai. The identity of Tenryubito is too deterrent. Even if Gorosei, five Elder Stars, wants to destroy Doflamingo, there is nothing they can do. They can only go around in a big circle and help Kaido to kill him. In fact, these plans were originally planned to be perfected. Anyone can join the Shichibukai, but Doflamingo's identity is sensitive, and at the same time, extremely sinister and despicable people can't join. Now, Doflamingo, who has not joined the Shichibukai, dares to use his identity to threaten the government and boldly plunder Tenryubito's heavenly gold. If he joins the Shichibukai pirate organization, it is not difficult to imagine that he will become more daring in the future. With the movement of the Kaido pirates, the whole world exploded in an instant, and some people with ulterior motives made things worse. Especially the disappearance of the Akagami, red hair, pirates without warning. The situation became more confusing and intriguing in an instant. There are some strange rumors circulating all over the world, And there are even rumors that other pirates saw the Akagami, red hair, pirates appear and occupy Kaido's original site. As for whether it is true or false, it is unknown. Captain Red Hair Shanks, that despicable man, looks righteous on the surface, but I didn't expect him to secretly occupy our island. That shameless villain. On the blue sea, as many as dozens of battleships were slowly moving forward. The special skeleton flag showed that it was the Kaido pirates. The huge group of battleships gathered was despairing, no different from the moving mountains on the sea. On the deck of the ship, Kaido, who was dressed in martial attire, was clearly visible. His body was a few meters tall and was covered in wounds. His round eyes gave off a dignified aura, making people not dare to look at him directly. With a wave of his hand, the subordinates behind him who were filled with righteous indignation immediately shut their mouths. The scene suddenly became solemn and quiet. Turning his head, 100 Beast Kaido nodded with satisfaction and smiled. In this pirate group, no one dares to question his right to speak. He is the only dictator. Don't worry about that. Red Hair isn't that kind of man. 100 Beast Kaido said with certainty. He had dealt with Red Hair Shanks before and knew what kind of person he was. Even if Red Hair Shanks really occupies our island, what can he do? It's just a tiny piece of land. We can snatch it back at any time. His majestic voice was filled with an overbearing aura that could swallow the heavens and swallow the earth. Kaido was filled with confidence. There are countless islands on the Grand Line. If he can get something from Doflamingo, even if it costs hundreds of islands, it's not a big deal. With Kaido's movements and the mysterious disappearance of Red Hair Shanks, the whole world began to boil. All the pirate groups and different forces smelled a conspiracy and began to plan their own conspiracy. Damn that Doflamingo and that Kaido and that red-haired Shanks, who's coming from behind. In the Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral office, Fleet Admiral Sengoku's face was blue. The desk that he often used to work on was smashed to pieces by him. It was enough to see how angry he was. Although the goal of these pirates was not the Marine, Sengoku was still very angry. Kaido led the entire fleet to find trouble with Doflamingo, which is equivalent to directly ignoring the existence of the Marine. This is more uncomfortable than openly opposing the Marine. The Marine is so small that they are ignored. How can Sengoku swallow this? Call all the generals above Rear Admiral for an immediate meeting. Kaido is not allowed to ignore us so openly. With a snort, Sengoku ordered the guards outside the door with murderous intent. Dustless of Marioa also frowned slightly, keenly smelling the smell of conspiracy. For Kaido, Doflamingo is just a small sparrow, not worth mentioning. The route of the Kaido pirates is Doflamingo. It has been invisibly explained that his goal is Doflamingo, who has been in the limelight recently. Now for such a small character, Dustless naturally can't understand. After thinking for a long time, Dustless couldn't think of what Doflamingo had done to offend Kaido. Guru, while thinking about it, the Din Din Mushi in his arms suddenly rang. The black Din Din Mushi was used by Dustless to communicate with Doflamingo. Before Dustless could speak, Doflamingo's anxious voice and line of sight could be heard. Kaido, that bastard, looks like he's going to kill me. Come and save me. Hearing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows and his eyes flashed with displeasure. He needs Doflamingo to build Pluton, not to be the captain of the fire brigade. Wherever there is a fire, he will go there to put out the fire. Looking cold, he was about to refuse Doflamingo, but then he remembered Kaido's strange traces, and the words on the tip of his tongue were taken back. Seeing Dustless silent, Doflamingo's face was full of anxiety. People who have experienced Kaido's horror all go to hell. If Dustless abandons him, the only end result will be the same. He will go to hell with those who have been destroyed by Kaido before. In despair, Dustless's voice sounded in the silent Din Din Mushi. Chapter 522. Doflamingo's heart suddenly thumped, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead uncontrollably. In a trance, he had already guessed what Dustless was going to say, and his heart jumped up and down. Droplets of sweat continuously formed on his temples and dripped down. Even though it was a blazing hot day, Doflamingo still felt the bone-piercing cold wind. His whole body felt like it was soaked in ice-cold water, and he couldn't help but shiver. He had committed countless atrocities, but they were nothing out of the ordinary for Doflamingo. There was only one thing he was afraid of in his life. Helping you solve the big problem of Kaido is not a problem, but he came all the way here to trouble you. I need a reasonable explanation. Dustless's cold voice sounded from the other side of the Den Mushi, and there was no room for negotiation. Only Doflamingo knew the reason. If I am killed by Kaido, it won't be good for you. Doflamingo lowered his posture, and there was a hint of threat. He was responsible for monitoring Caesar's creation of Pluto. If he was killed by Kaido, there would be no one who could help Caesar create Pluto. Doflamingo's importance was self-evident. However, Dustless didn't buy it. Doflamingo, a cold voice came from the other side of the Den Mushi, and an invisible killing intent seemed to be transmitted through the Den Mushi. Doflamingo's hair trembled uncontrollably, thinking of Dustless's terrifying power that could fight with Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. He couldn't help but mumble. The difference in strength between the two was like heaven and earth. Perhaps Dustless could just move his fingers and easily crush him. It was ridiculous to talk about conditions. Raising his eyes, he saw that the Den Mushi was coldly looking at Doflamingo, and it seemed to be hesitating whether to kill him or not. The higher one's status was, the more afraid one was of death, especially someone like Doflamingo, who still had unfulfilled dreams. It was impossible for him to die so early. Even if he died, he would only be satisfied after ruining this rotten world. I didn't mean to threaten you, Doflamingo quickly explained, and his voice lost its calmness. Being targeted by Kaido is not a dead end. The world is so big that you can completely abandon everything and find an uninhabited island to make a comeback in the future. Of course, this is just a last resort. But if you offend Dustless, you will die even if you escape to the ends of the earth. In the face of Dustless's godlike strength and the White Zetsu army all over the world, even if you have Dustless, you can't escape Dustless's net. In the world, no one can escape Dustless's lock. Confess or not, it's your choice. Without waiting for Doflamingo's reaction, Dustless turned off the Den Mushi indifferently, leaving him to fend for himself. Needless to say, in the end, Doflamingo would obediently beg him to help. Because in this world, without Dustless, it would be difficult for Doflamingo to survive. He offended the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and also offended the Kaido pirates. If he loses the protection of Dustless, Doflamingo's future situation can be imagined. What awaits him is nothing but death. Sitting lazily on the sofa, he closed his eyes and rested. On the table in front of him was the black Den Mushi used to communicate with Doflamingo. Unless Doflamingo really wanted to commit suicide, he would definitely beg him. It is precisely because he saw through Doflamingo's current predicament that Dustless can sit still. Young Master, the cadre of the Don Quixote family, looked at the ashen-faced Doflamingo in fear and unconsciously retreated. His murderous aura was like a monstrous wave that could erupt at any time. The slightest carelessness would cause them to be sucked in. Hearing this, Doflamingo remained silent, his eyes flashing back and forth. After pondering for a while, he chose to press the Den Mushi in his hand. The only person who can drag him from hell to heaven is Dustless. Whether it is the Marine or the Kaido pirates, including the world government, they all want him to disappear as soon as possible and restore the peace of the whole world. Is this your choice? In that case, tell me what I want to hear. Dustless's hoarse voice came through the Den Mushi. Doflamingo nodded heavily and told Dustless the development of the matter. It started a few months ago when Whitebeard and Red Hair Shanks were fighting. About an hour later, Doflamingo told Wu Chan the truth of the matter in full detail. He didn't dare to hide anything. After all, this is his only life-saving straw. If he is abandoned, there is absolutely no possibility of him turning over in this life. At the same time, Doflamingo's hatred for Kaido is even deeper. If it weren't for him, everything would have played out according to his plan. Sitting on the throne of the Shichibukai, then becoming the king of Dressrosa, then secretly creating the Pluto, a peerless killing machine, and finally overlooking the world with this as the foundation. The legendary Pirate King is also in his hands. However, all of this was because of that bastard Kaido's sudden appearance. His entire plan was disrupted, and his hatred for Kaido soared crazily. If it weren't for the difference in strength between them, Doflamingo would absolutely fight to the death. He was originally an ambitious person. Temporarily submitting himself to Dustless is just to protect himself. Now that Kaido has stirred things up, if he leaves Dustless in the future, he will suffer a devastating blow. He doesn't need to do it himself. He just needs to make the news known to the world, and Doflamingo will be doomed. The Yonko for emperors behind the scenes will be known to the world, and there will be no place for Doflamingo in this world. A Yonko for emperors can destroy Doflamingo, let alone four. Chapter 523. A lot of information poured into Dustless's mind through the Den Mushi. At first, Dustless listened with relish, but in the end, his eyebrows were tightly wrinkled together. Half a day later, Dustless finally figured out the whole story. It turned out that the devil fruit in his house was the one that Doflamingo escaped. What a farce! Dustless was speechless as he shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect to come back to this. Seeming to think of something, Dustless suddenly had a flash of inspiration in his mind, and he keenly realized that it was not as simple as he thought. Mariewa has a lot of things, and even if Doflamingo has the means to steal them, he can't easily steal them, let alone retreat. This is extremely unreasonable. After carefully searching for the cause and effect, after a long silence, Dustless vaguely guessed the truth hidden behind the scenes. Judging from the current situation, it should have been the 5 old fellows who did this on purpose. Wu Chen's eyes lit up as he speculated. Although it's just a personal subjective assumption, there is full certainty that the Gorosei deliberately let them go. According to Dustless's estimation, the strength of each of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, is at least at the level of Yonko for emperors. Mariewa is the backyard they have been running for many years, and the probability of them stealing things quietly is 0. Deliberately? Hearing this, Doflamingo suddenly froze. His face was incredulous, and then his face was livid. Doflamingo's eyes flickered incessantly. He had been rolling and crawling on the sea for decades, so he had developed a sharp intellect. He had never guessed in this direction before, and he didn't want to think about the past that had already gone with the wind, because most of them were painful memories. Now, in retrospect, he suddenly realized that it was indeed too incredible, and everything went smoothly beyond his imagination. In a heavily guarded place like Mariewa, it is incredible to be able to steal things, and it also smoothly caused a war between the Yonko for emperors. It was okay if he didn't think in this direction before, but now after Dustless's sudden reminder, Doflamingo found that this smoothness was indeed a bit unusual. It was like a script that was meticulously crafted for him. After a while, Doflamingo gritted his teeth and roared, "Those 5 damned old fellows are truly vicious." The low roar that came out of his throat was like a dying beast struggling, hoarse and full of madness. Doflamingo had clearly guessed the intentions of the 5 Elder Stars. Using his hand to provoke the Yonko for emperors, war, causing the pirates to kill each other, making each pirate group suffer heavy losses. By the way, the news of the fruit was exposed to the Kaido pirates through the spies of the government. With Kaido's nature, what would happen next was self-evident. A minor character will always be a minor character. You don't see far enough. Stealing something from the 5 honored stars has made you so pleased that you forgot yourself. Dustless shook his head and sighed when he heard the roar from the Den Mushi. Now, Doflamingo is only a young man in his 30s. Compared with Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, who has lived for who knows how many years, he is still far behind. However, This didn't mean that everything would be fine. It would make Doflamingo realize how fragile he was. For the time being, don't act rashly. Hide to avoid the wind. After this ordeal, there will definitely be a man named Doflamingo in the position of the 7 warlords of the sea. Wu Chen's eyes flashed, and he was sure. The Gorosei, 5 elder stars, can't wait to get rid of Doflamingo because of the constant pressure from Tenryubido. They can't stand the pressure of Tenryubido, and they can only use this method. If they can escape safely, Doflamingo will become a Shichibukai. I hope so. He nodded and then hung up the Den Mushi. Wisdom may be able to play with any character in the world. If it is comparable to the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, Doflamingo can only look at it and sigh. Just like this variable in front of him, he was foolishly sold by the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Dustless was too lazy to waste his breath. After all, Doflamingo was just a small character who didn't enter the mainstream. Even I am included in the calculation. Do you want to use Doflamingo to lure me out? Looking down at the building in the distance, Dustless swallowed all the red liquid in the goblet into his lungs, and his face outlined a cold, murderous intent. The murderous intent almost materialized out of his body. Ka, ka, ka. The delicate, transparent goblet in his hand couldn't withstand the murderous intent. It was covered with a layer of frost, and then countless cracks appeared, and the next second, it turned into messy fragments. The place where Dustless's sight was locked is the residential area of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. It's just 100 Bs Kaido. It's not worth it for me to do it myself. You 5 old guys can use him. I can also use Kaido. Dustless sneered with a strange arc in the corner of his mouth. At the same time, he made up his mind to give the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, an unforgettable lesson. If these restless old men don't teach them a lesson, they will never know what it means to be in pain. In the dark basement, there were several decaying coffins. Judging from the changed quality of the wood, it was obvious that they have been here for many years. I didn't use you in the last world. I didn't expect to use you in this world. The dark space splashed with ripples. Looking at it, it was Dustless who was filled with emotion. On the one hand, he had to deal with Kaido, an unprecedented enemy, and, on the other hand, he was determined to teach the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, a lesson. Dustless could only use the Edo Tensei to awaken the former undead army to cooperate with him. These decaying old coffins in front of him were the corpses of the past Hokage, and the powerful ones that Dustless secretly ordered White Zetsu to collect. Of course, it also included the corpses of some powerful existences in this world. I'll choose you. With a faint smile, Dustless walked to the side of the coffin that still had a clear color. Obviously, the person inside was the mysterious existence that died not long ago. Chapter 524. White Zetsu was an expert in eating corpses. It was too wasteful for him to use powerful corpses to collect information, so he handed them over to Dustless to store and collect secretly. After years of accumulation, the current scene was formed. The ground was filled with rotten coffins, and among them, there were some legendary great bandits. Not only humans, there were also other races, such as the giant race and the fishman race. In short, Dustless's meticulously created flat room was like a race collection museum, containing all kinds of powerful creatures. Unknowingly, Dustless also became a corpse collector. The entire space in the quiet basement was almost filled with all kinds of coffins. They were crowded together, and there was almost no extra space for people to stand. The basement was like an ice cellar in an extremely cold place. Therefore, most of the corpses sleeping here maintained the same appearance as when they were alive. Their bodies were not effectively damaged. After the Edo Tensei, the more perfect the body, the stronger the strength. It's a pity. Looking around, Dustless shook his head slightly. Only a few of these people could see the world again. 99% of them were destined to sleep here forever. Those who could be used in the future were only a few. In that case, let me awaken your sleeping souls. After looking around, Dustless's eyes rippled. He suddenly clasped his hands, and the vigorous chakra in his body began to surge. Buzz, 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 crack, crack, crack. The ground also began to tremble strangely, and the ice layer in the ice cellar began to crack. Looking over, the coffin that had been lying on the ground without moving suddenly began to rise slowly. Seeing this scene, Dustless's mouth curved into a smile, and the seal of the technique was also completed. He then shouted, "Edo Tensei!" The heavy coffin trembled more and more violently. The iron nails used to fix the coffin lid also fell off, emitting a rotting aura. The intact corpse inside was clearly visible. Those 5 old guys are not easy to deal with. After thinking for a while, Dustless's eyes swept to the other coffins. According to Dustless's guess, the strength of the 5 elder stars may be maintained at the same level as the Yonko on the surface, about the same level as Kaido, but the reality was not so simple. The last time White Zetsu secretly went to spy on the conversation of these 5 old men, he was actually caught alive. If it was not for White Zetsu's cleverness and decisively chose to escape, it was likely that he would have completely fallen. His body may be directly killed by the 5 elder stars. It was Dustless who taught White Zetsu's ability. Even if this kid's skill had not reached the point of perfection, it was reasonable to say that the 5 elder stars was on par with Kaido. It was impossible to perceive his existence, let alone perceive the existence of White Zetsu. However, the result of the fact was unexpected. White Zetsu was not only caught, but his body was also almost killed, leaving only half of his body. In other words, if Dustless didn't use Yin-Yang escape to help him condense a new body, White Zetsu's body would have died. If those 5 old fellows join hands, their strength will be increased by dimension. Maybe these experts from Edo Tensei will also be killed. Dustless's eyes glowed. It was just a guess, but he was very sure of it. According to his guess, the 5 elder stars were all ability users. The bald 5 elder stars with the sword only used swordsmanship and did not use the ability of the fruit. Moreover, the specific ability of the devil fruit eaten by the 5 elder stars was unknown. The only thing that was certain was that the strength of their cooperation was definitely far beyond the strength of an individual. In fact, it was no different from the principle of ninjutsu. To make the most easy-to-understand analogy, it was like the wind can make the fire burn more fiercely, and the cooperation will exert greater power. Although he didn't know what the fruit ability of the 5 elder stars was, the principle was like this. I'll let you explore the wind first. Glancing at the corpses, Dustless's eyes flashed with a strange color. If it was really the same as what he guessed, these corpses would be useless because these people who reached the admiral level were already very rare. Their individual strength was not as good as the 5 elder stars, let alone forcing them to join forces. Although the Edo Tensei was immortal, Dustless felt that it was still a bit of a fantasy to kill the 5 elder stars. Dustless-sama. With the sound of cracking ice, White Zetsu's body also appeared. Obviously, he was very familiar with this place, and in the blink of an eye, he locked on to Dustless's location. Dustless is currently resting on an island in the New World. It is estimated that after the adjustment, it is estimated that he will go on the road immediately. Doflamingo also disappeared and hid according to your instructions. Looking at Dustless's eyes, White Zetsu reported. He was created by Dustless and knows many secrets of Dustless. He is already used to this scene, not to mention controlling these corpses. He has seen more shocking scenes than this. After the adjustment, they will go on the road again. Dustless's eyes flashed with cold anger, and the work at hand stopped. Indeed, they have to go on the road. The only difference is that the direction of their route has changed, and the place they're going to is the underworld. The cold words came out of Dustless's throat, and the temperature in the ice cellar suddenly became even colder. Obviously, Dustless was serious. These corpses from the Edo Tensei should be used to deal with the 5 elder stars. As for the Kaido pirates, I will personally destroy them. Mysterious energy fluctuations suddenly erupted from the coffin, and as Dustless's voice fell, the figures lying in the coffin stood up. After a few seconds, he opened his deathly still eyes. The strange, lifeless pupils have no normal human emotions. There is no heartbeat, and their bodies are cold. Even if they don't say it, they're walking dead, just killing machines. Chapter 5:25. These people have cracks all over their bodies, and their skin is no different from pottery shards, as if it will peel off at any time. Don't mention using them to fight. Even walking is a problem. However, Dustless and White Zetsu are full of self-confidence. Most of the former in the Edo Tensei are the indigenous people of this world. As for the strong people of the previous world, Dustless chose to hide them. Eggs can't be put in one basket. Dustless still knows this shallow truth. These people are all equipment to test the 5 Elder Stars. Dustless looked at all the corpses in his eyes. Most of them are Marines, and they are at the level of Vice Admiral. Even if they are pirates with the strength of an admiral, they are very rare. And because of the Edo Tensei, the strength of these people will be reduced to some extent. Wuchen also did not expect these people to defeat the 5 Elder Stars. This group of people who are already dead might just be shrimp soldiers and crab generals to the 5 Elder Stars with a wave of their hand. They could not make a difference, and the main show is not on them. Having said that, his eyes suddenly fell on White Zetsu's head. Dustless asked with a little dissatisfaction, "One Piece, Joe LD. Roger, his body hasn't been found yet. It's been nearly half a year, White Zetsu." Hearing the dissatisfaction in Dustless's tone, White Zetsu can only respond with a wry smile, and his eyes flashed with embarrassment. "I've tried my best." After Marine executed Roger, his body was secretly hidden by the government. Over the years, White Zetsu has been ordered to track the traces of Roger's body, but he has never found it, and there is no news at all. He can only search like a headless fly. Maybe he was taken by the government for research. Dustless's pupils narrowed slightly, and he said with certainty, "The technology controlled by a peerless genius like Vegapunk was incredible. The reason why Caesar could develop the artificial devil fruit was that it was based on Vegapunk's bloodline factor. Otherwise, the artificial devil fruit would never have been produced. Could it be that the guy with a mortal body can really use science to change everything?" Dustless was full of doubts. The idea that strength ruled over everything had a deep-rooted influence on him. The logic that science could turn back time and bring people back to life was a fantasy in Dustless's eyes. Anyway, at least we can be sure that Roger's body is definitely in the hands of the government. Shrugging, White Zetsu made an "I've tried my best" expression. Since it was kept in the hands of the government, it had no other use except for secret research. Dustless waved his hand when he saw this, and he couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on White Zetsu. Suddenly, countless small vortexes appeared before him, and they swallowed him and the army of Edo Tensei. Only White Zetsu was left in the cold ice cellar where the corpse was stored. Time flew by. Unknowingly, 7 days seemed to have slipped through the cracks between his fingers. The short 7 days were neither long nor short. In short, many major events had occurred during this period of time. In the face of such a rampant and lawless Kaido pirates, the first to respond was naturally the Marine headquarters in the name of absolute justice. Sengoku has now been promoted to Fleet Admiral, and it is certainly impossible for him to do it himself. This mission is led by the Marine hero Vice Admiral Garp, who gathers most of the elites to crusade against the Kaido pirates. Secondly, pirates around the world also heard the news, and some pirate groups took the opportunity to occupy Kaido's island and wantonly exploited the ordinary people on the island. The originally quiet world. After such a disturbance, the situation suddenly became strange and unpredictable, and there was no clue. Especially the island that once belonged to Kaido, there was a lot of crying and howling. Somewhere on an island in the New World, it was infinitely close to the predicted location of the Doflamingo pirates. The hot sun was burning the earth, and the temperature was abnormally hot. Kaido also ordered the fleet to stop sailing, showing a rare side of sympathy for his subordinates. He casually found an island with a suitable climate and gave the tired crew a day off. As the leader of the pirate group, strength is important, but the rule of mercy and punishment is to win people's hearts. After all, only when these little brothers live freely, they will work hard. Kaido was well aware of this universal truth. Captain, that group of clowns dared to provoke us in public. We should immediately send a fleet to turn around and destroy them. Under a 100-meter-high tree, 100 Beast Kaido's huge body was clearly visible. At this moment, he was holding a huge jar in his hands and drinking wine. Next to him was a group of complaining crew members. All of them looked at the newspaper in their hands in shock and anger, and then they tore the newspaper into pieces in anger, their faces full of indignation. A group of clowns in the New World took advantage of their absence to capture all the islands that once belonged to the Kaido pirates. When there is no tiger in the mountain, the monkey is the king. Outrageous. Shut up. As a pirate, you have to be able to pick up and let go. Those small profits, only rats will value them. Because that group of minions only know how to compete for material interests, they're doomed to be short-sighted, incompetent waste for the rest of their lives. Kaido's powerful voice shocked everyone, and the pirates looked at each other and closed their mouths. The right to speak of the Kaido pirates was all in the hands of Kaido alone. However, that group of waste dared to do things beyond their abilities, which means that they are ready to pay the corresponding price. They dare to provoke the Kaido pirates. No matter where they escape, they will die. Standing up, the soaring Haushiko Haki swept away, and the sky was roaring. The cloudless sky suddenly became gloomy, and a bottomless dark abyss appeared directly over the island. The jagged cracks, as if torn by pure brute force, extended all the way to the distant sky. Chapter 5:26. Kaido's heart was higher than the sky. His face was full of arrogance. His raging Haushiko Haki shook the earth, and under his majesty, the particles on the ground trembled slightly. A sharp sense of oppression rushed out of his tall body, and the crew on the entire island trembled. In the face of this unprecedented king's wind, they couldn't even think of resisting. The pirate crew in front of Kaido fell to their knees. Their faces were pale, and they looked at him in horror. The fear in their eyes was clear. But maybe it was because of Kaido's bad luck. He was used to being lawless, and he didn't expect to be slapped in the face. Boom! A series of cannonballs roared and exploded without warning, leaving scorched black holes on the ground, and fresh soil scattered like flowers, splashing all over the ground with fine particles of soil. The people of the Kaido pirates who had not yet reacted inevitably ate a mouthful of dust. Bastard! Which bastard ate the courage of a leopard? The members of the Kaido pirates were furious, staring angrily at the distant sky, which was the direction of the cannonballs. Looking far, a big ship suddenly came into view, with a pink flamingo carved on the bow. There is no doubt that it must be the pirates of Doflamingo. I didn't go to you, but you came to me. Are you scared, Doflamingo? The strong body rippled, and the dust on his body was immediately shaken into powder. 100 Beast Kaido looked at the pirate ship that was constantly firing, and his eyes were full of ridicule. He thought that Doflamingo couldn't wait to die. Looking at the sky, a man with pink feathers, bronze skin, and a ferocious face came directly from the sky. Is that his ability? Looking at the freely moving Doflamingo in the air, Kaido's eyes flashed with surprise. Ability users who could fly were few and far between, as rare as phoenix feathers and Chilean horns. His pupils suddenly widened, and his observation haki expanded without limit, and any changes in the sky were taken into his eyes. After a while, the shock on Kaido's rough old face was replaced by ridicule and sarcasm. The thin line under Doflamingo's feet was exposed to his eyes. Fancy moves. I thought it was a rare ability, but it turned out to be an opportunistic, incompetent waste, wasting my love for talent. Kaido curled his lips and said contemptuously, people who had the ability to fly were extremely rare. There were only 5 types of people in the world who had the ability to fly, so one could imagine how rare they were. Originally, he had thought that Doflamingo was one of them, and for some unknown reason, he had set his eyes on him, but he hadn't expected him to be bluffing. A bird dares to soar in the sky. You should know the occasion. Kaido sneered again and again. Cold light gathered in his eyes as he looked at Doflamingo, who was flying over from the sky. His eyes were filled with mockery, and his tyrannical eyes were filled with mockery. Ka-ka! Turning around, Kaido snapped a big tree that was as thick as his waist. Then, he easily carried it on his shoulder. His casual and relaxed appearance made people feel a chill run down their spines. How was his shoulder a tree that was more than 10 meters long? It was clearly a newborn baby that was as light as a feather. Only by using force can you get this annoying fly down. His right arm clasped the front side of the tree, and the big hand then surged with a mysterious force. The emerald, vibrant tree instantly turned into a strange dark color. When armament haki reaches a certain level, it can be wrapped around the weapon. Get down for me. With Kaido's roar, the tree, which was more than 10 meters long, was thrown away by Kaido at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye, and it went straight toward Doflamingo in the sky. This beast, Doflamingo, who was jumping in the sky, saw this and his face was blue, and he waved his hand and shot out countless rays, trying to dismember and crush the whole body of the tree. Clang, clang, clang. The crisp roar of the steel resounded through the sky, but there were only a few sparks. Not to mention dismembering the armament haki tree. It was extremely difficult to leave a mark on it. In the blink of an eye, it was close to Doflamingo, and under everyone's stunned gaze, it hit Doflamingo's body. The powerful giant tree easily blasted Doflamingo, and his body fell from a height of tens of meters on the island, smashing a large, deep pit on the ground. This bastard, I will not let him go in the future. In the big pit, Doflamingo's face was gloomy, and his body was full of scars and bloodstains everywhere. Looking around, his whole body has entered the state of armament haki and has become dark. Even so, many of his ribs have been broken, and there are messy, bloody traces everywhere on his body. If it hadn't been for armament haki over the years, maybe he would have been smashed into minced meat. For a time, Doflamingo wanted to tear Kaido's body into pieces and grind his bones to ashes. Then he remembered Kaido's tragic situation soon after, and a grim smile appeared on his face. It's good that you're not dead. It's not easy to control your strength, but you're already so embarrassed with only a few % of my strength. You're really small. The sky suddenly darkened. Doflamingo was stunned. He turned his head and saw that it was Kaido looking down at him. Unlike before, Doflamingo was abnormally calm at this moment. He didn't have the slightest bit of fear and even had a bit of contempt. Boy, you're looking for death. Seeing Doflamingo sizing him up with disdain, the killing intent in Kaido's eyes began to erupt. He raised his fist high, and in an instant, it turned into a shiny black iron fist. Just as he was about to kill Doflamingo, he thought of the Pluto blueprint and lowered his fist. A strange smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and Doflamingo's face was full of arrogance. His unbridled laughter was accompanied by a ripple that resounded between heaven and earth. It contained an indescribable magic that did not dissipate for a long time. Kneel down and kowtow and admit your mistake. Maybe I'll be in a good mood and help you ask him to forgive you once. Chapter 5:27. Kneel down and kowtow and admit your mistake. Maybe I will be in a good mood and help you ask him to forgive you once. Doflamingo's arrogant laughter fell, and the whole scene was dead silent. The members of the Kaido pirates who came were all snoring, and their footsteps stopped abruptly. They instinctively retreated and couldn't help but sweat for Doflamingo's madness. Looking at the whole world, only Doflamingo dared to be so arrogant in front of Kaido. Let Kaido kneel down and kowtow and admit his mistake? What joke? This kind of joke is nothing but a joke. Looking down at the triumphant Doflamingo, The frequency of Kaido's breathing suddenly accelerated, and the heat waves exhaled from his nostrils clamored his anger. His tall body trembled, and his eyes were bloodshot and turned scarlet in an instant. The tide-like killing intent swept out like a flood, unstoppable, and the surrounding temperature dropped to the freezing point. After crossing the sea for many years, he is accustomed to the ebb and flow of the tides, and has experienced countless storms and waves. Even a legendary figure like Whitebeard will be 120 times more alert when he sees Kaido. Full of loopholes, Doflamingo's eyes emitted a soul-stirring luster as he looked at the opportunity. Regardless of his injuries, he took advantage of the situation and his tall body moved. An afterimage floated past, and Doflamingo ignored the distance in the blink of an eye. His black iron fist was boiling, and he used all his strength to greet Kaido's lower abdomen. His hatred for Kaido is as deep as the sea, and Doflamingo's hatred for Kaido is too one-sided to describe it as irreconcilable. Clang! The crisp sound of steel spread, and an invisible ripple swayed out. His right arm, wrapped in armament haki, twitched uncontrollably, and Doflamingo's face was obviously stiff. Looking up, Doflamingo's full-powered fist landed on Kaido's body, but not even the slightest change appeared. Kaido's calm and coarse face silently mocked Doflamingo's fragility. "Your mouth is powerful. I thought your hands and feet were not bad. Now it seems that I overestimated you. Stupid Doflamingo." In the end, Kaido's old face was full of sarcasm. Ka ka ka. Suddenly, a slight burning pain spread all over his body. His thick black eyebrows congealed, and Kaido turned his head. A few sparkling and sharp thin lines were even more terrifying than a treasured sword, cutting the surface of his skin. It was stained with visible blood. Kaido's skin, which could be considered as the surface of a meteorite, was actually cut by this unsightly thin line. "This is the price for underestimating me," Doflamingo said proudly when he saw the slight change in Kaido's face. He enjoyed the feeling of floating in the air. However, before Doflamingo could feel proud of himself, a cold, murderous aura locked onto him and sentenced him to death. The entire world had abandoned Doflamingo. "Idiot, you should have heard of my nickname, the world's strongest creature, right? Do you think this kind of small injury will have any effect on me?" His back, that was full of bloody scars, instantly recovered to its original state. "What goes around comes around. Now it's time for me to make my move." His eyes widened. Kaido's killing intent was awe-inspiring. His palms clenched into fists. Armament haki followed closely behind, and the huge iron fist blasted out mercilessly. Armament haki hardening. Boom! Even if he used armament haki to defend himself, Doflamingo was still easily blown away. The ferocious fist blasted him hundreds of meters away, and the ground also pulled out the same long crack, extending all the way to the distance. BB Astor starred as the gap so big. Doflamingo said shakily as he lifted his body with great difficulty. His pale face was filled with unwillingness. "I thought it was enough to overestimate you. It seems that I still underestimated you." Gasping for breath, even with armament haki's defense, his internal organs were instantly dislocated, his ribs were broken, and he was dying. Despite this, Doflamingo was still unusually calm. "Overestimated me? Who do you think you are? With a small fish like you, even if you practice for 20 years, you will still end up the same as today." Looking indifferently at the half-dead Doflamingo, Kaido said disdainfully, "I'll only say it once. The design of the ancient weapon Pluto handed over to me immediately." Kaido tried to hide the excitement in his heart, but in the end, he still roared. Getting the design of the ancient weapon, the goal of conquering the world, will be turned from a dream into a reality, and it will be within reach. "You even know about this kind of thing?" Doflamingo was stunned and asked in a bad way. Doflamingo's voice was abnormally hoarse, but he was still very calm. Not only that, but there was also a hint of mockery and complacency in his voice. Doflamingo laughed sinisterly, full of confidence. "Unfortunately, you won't have the chance." Hearing this, Kaido just looked at Doflamingo with an indifferent face, and the corner of his mouth lifted into a sneer. Without turning his head, he sneered in a very contemptuous tone. The thin thread you use to sew doesn't have any effect on me, and there's no need to avoid it. That kind of small wound can be recovered in just a blink of an eye, Kaido said confidently, his face full of pride. The strongest creature in the world is not groundless, but the real deal. Any injury can be recovered. If your heart is penetrated, can it be repaired? It's really exciting. A ghostly voice came quietly, and Kaido was suddenly stunned. This mysterious voice gave him a feeling of déjà vu. While Kaido was thinking, an unprecedented force roared behind him. This was a rare moment of panic. This threat that could penetrate through the mountain caused Kaido to feel an enormous threat. Immediately, he tactfully withdrew without any hesitation. However, apparently, Kaido's action was expected, and the golden light bullet that had been waiting for a long time rushed out and instantly surrounded Kaido. Chapter 528. The light bullets that were as dense as rain swept out rapidly. There were tens of thousands of them, and they were overwhelming. They were as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges River. Due to too many reasons, the entire horizon was dyed in golden yellow. The target of such a shocking number of attacks is only Kaido. Clang, clang, clang. The crisp roar of steel resounded and spread to every inch of the sky. Without thinking, it could be guessed that Kaido has entered the state of armament hockey to defend against the impact of the light bullets. No matter how strong his body's recovery ability is, he is not an idiot to let this dense light bullet attack. Beaten like this, you are still alive. The space around Doflamingo was distorted, forming a small vortex. Mysterious energy was used from the vortex, and the rotating vortex also expanded. Wu Chun flew out from within. He always had those jet black and deep pupils. His pure black eyeballs were even brighter than the pure black agate. Following Dustless's line of sight, Doflamingo was covered in blood. Because of the long time, these blood stains have condensed into scars, and the long and narrow wounds all over the body are very clear. Through Dustless's powerful and abnormal strength, it can be clearly seen that more than 70% of Doflamingo's ribs have been broken. Obviously, Kaido deliberately left them alive, otherwise Doflamingo would have turned into a pile of meat paste. It seems that the ancestors of your Tang Quixote clan have shown up and blessed your life, Doflamingo. Dustless looked deeply at Doflamingo and joked with a deep meaning. Dustless heard the process of Kaido asking for the Pluto design blueprint. Those 5 damn old guys, in the future, I will kill them first. When he vomited blood, Doflamingo's face was as pale as paper. Without a doubt, the person who told Kaido the top secret news that he has the Pluto design blueprint is undoubtedly the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Besides Dustless, only the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, know about the Pluto design blueprint. They want to kill with a borrowed knife. This guy's head may be really sick. Dustless shook his head and sighed, helplessly said. Originally, he could have directly dealt with 100 Beast Kaido, but Doflamingo had to test his own strength to find out how big the gap between him and Kaido is. As a result, he was beaten to this miserable appearance on the verge of death. Ouch! His loud and sonorous voice was filled with endless indignation. A powerful energy ripple erupted from Kaido's body as he was surrounded by the golden light. An unstoppable air wave brewed for a long while before finally erupting. Boom, boom, boom. The thousands of golden lights were annihilated in an instant. The tyrannical impact annihilated them and turned into a hurricane. A shock wave visible to the naked eye, directly toward Dustless and Doflamingo. Gulp. Seeing this exaggerated scene, Doflamingo couldn't help but hide behind Dustless. Now he has no fighting power. If he is affected by this impact, it is tantamount to stepping directly into the underworld. The Emperor of the New World, the Yonko for emperors, are really not easy to deal with. Dustless felt the level 10 storm coming out, and he sighed. The force that wants to crush him and annihilate him can't be underestimated. At present, except for Bigamam, every other Yonko for emperors has this kind of haushikahaki, and their attainments have reached the peak of perfection. Even if Dustless hasn't fought with Bigamam for the time being, he is convinced that the only woman in the Yonko for emperors also has haushikahaki, and only haushikahaki can match their status. It turned out to be you, bastard. Kaido glared at Dustless with his eyes wide open. His hoarse voice was accompanied by a continuous eruption of flames. The flowing air became hot and dry for a moment. When Dustless used Genjutsu to crush him like an ant, Kaido's heart had been left with an unforgettable shadow. As you can see, it's me. Hearing this, Dustless smiled indifferently, turning a deaf ear to Kaido's murderous aura. Doflamingo looked at Kaido with interest. From his expression and the hostile tone of the two of them, there seemed to be some sort of enmity between them. Kaido's hostile look meant that he must have lost in the end. Go to the ship and wait for me. This battle is no longer something you can get involved in. The majestic lion's roar resounded in the ears of all the members of the Kaido pirates. They looked at each other and ran to the battleship docked on the coast. Seeing the members of the Kaido pirates scattered, Dustless said, "100 Beast Kaido, you want to fight me one-on-one? You're just a loser. This time I will definitely help you." The old face stared fiercely at Dustless, and the eyes of the Kaido falcon fell on Doflamingo. Pointing at him, who was only half alive, he said contemptuously, "No wonder this little one dares to rob the celestial dragon's gold of the sky, and no admiral of the marine headquarters came to kill him. It turned out that you connived behind Doflamingo." Hearing this, Doflamingo didn't deny it. He just smiled gloomily and at the same time gave Kaido a come-and-hit-me expression. "Damn bug. I will get the design of Pluton and tear you to pieces." With a heavy snort, Kaido no longer paid any attention to Doflamingo. His gaze was fixed on Dustless as he recalled what Shanks had told him about Dustless. "I thought that the red-hair man Shanks was just a joke. Now you're so lawless, and there's no marine to punish you too. In the world, only celestial dragons dare to play with the marine and the government like this. Hey, it turns out that you're not stupid. Hey, both of us are celestial dragons." A gloomy, complacent, and somewhat surprised laughter came out of Doflamingo's mouth. It seemed that he was very surprised by Kaido's IQ. "You are right. He is indeed the one who protected me behind the scenes, and he is our new boss." Chapter 529. After many years of killing and tempering, he has trained his heart to be calm. Even so, after Doflamingo's words, it was hard to calm down. Since when did the celestial dragons, known as the biggest garbage of mankind, have such an unprecedented character, whose strength is enough to compete with the Yonko for emperors? Kaido couldn't understand it, even if he scratched his head. This is not scientific. Why are you so surprised as celestial dragons? We are descendants of the Creator. The blood of God flows in our body, and we are worthy of being the descendants of God. And don't compare us to the group of Mariewa. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Doflamingo sneered and mocked him. His beaming expression was extremely smug, and it was obvious that he was a villain intoxicated by success. Thinking of the sullen look of being beaten by 100 Beast Kaido before, Doflamingo was angry. If he could, he would immediately peel off his skin and pull out his bones. It seems that the communication between you, Yonko, for emperors, is also very close. It's not as disharmonious as the world thinks, but actually colluding secretly. Birds of a feather flock together. It is not impossible for the Yonko, for emperors, to secretly collude. If one day the world government mobilizes all its forces to clean them up, these four pirates will definitely unite and fight against the world government. But under normal circumstances, they still hate each other, secretly backstab each other, and plot against each other. It is impossible for them to come together unless they are forced to do so. After all, the grievances between the Yonko, for emperors, are also great. With the oppression of the world government, they may unite. Without this deterrence, the probability of them going to the dark side is zero. Because the nature of pirates is like this, compared to some unrealistic dreams, they sometimes care more about the small profits in front of them. This is also helpless. Who told the world government to be so aggressive? This is the product of the situation. This so-called alliance is the most reliable and the most dangerous. Kaido said lightly, there is no trust between pirates. Not to mention between pirate groups. Even within a pirate group, there are often killings and robberies. It is difficult to get rid of all mutual trust. If one day the pirates of the world can unite, the so-called world government would have already been overthrown. But one thing is certain, the future Marine and the world government will be in big trouble. Looking at Dustless mockingly, Kaido laughed out loud, hoping to see an expression of pain and disappointment on Dustless's face. However, he was destined to be disappointed. Dustless's face remained calm. World government? Its survival has nothing to do with me, and I'm not interested in it. Compared to the future of the world government, I care more about what's happening right now. His pupils suddenly narrowed, and his deep eyes shot out a cold, murderous aura. I really don't know about the future of the world government, but one thing is for sure. As one of the Yonko, you're going to be in big trouble. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless's body turned into a photon and whizzed out. His speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was unable to be captured by the naked eye. Only a straight ray of light was left in the air. I knew you would take the opportunity to make things difficult for me. Seeing this, Kaido just laughed without fear, and his blood was boiling. The reason why he challenged the other Yonko all year round was because he had a warlike heart. His observation haki expanded without limit, and he noticed that Dustless's trace was locked. He clenched his fist, and armament haki covered his entire arm, and his strong arm blasted out towards the void in front of him. Boom! Black and golden light collided with each other, and the center of the entire island trembled violently and rose a lot in an instant. Doflamingo, who was caught off guard, was swallowed up by the hurricane that spread out in all directions. He was powerlessly sent flying, and his mouth was filled with food. Heavens! Boom! The oppressive roar resounded between heaven and earth. The speed of the two figures was extremely fast, completely beyond human cognition. Kaido's exaggerated body height of several meters had both speed and strength. He could actually maintain the same speed as Wuchen, which was really shocking. Light speed kick. A straight and narrow light speed fell from the sky and went straight towards Kaido, who was crawling on the ground. In the blink of an eye, Kaido's whole body was swallowed and annihilated. Boom, boom, boom. With a violent explosion, Kaido's whole body was wrapped in a bright fire, and the hot temperature that was enough to burn everything quickly evaporated the moisture flowing in the air and even white boiling. What tough guy. A large, deep pit suddenly appeared on the ground, and Kaido was unscathed. His strong arm covered with armament haki was indestructible, and he was not hurt by the light speed kick. Just SOSO. Looking up at Dustless in the sky, Kaido smiled triumphantly, and he hooked his finger towards Dustless, motioning him to come at him. The reason why he lost to Dustless last time was because he didn't know the role of his weird eyes. Did a warm-up just now make you so proud that you forgot yourself? Quietly looking at the arrogant and overbearing Kaido, Dustless asked softly, turning a deaf ear to Kaido's provocation. I like people who take an inch and want a mile. If you have the ability, you can come at me. Hearing this, Kaido disdainfully curled his lips, still full of provocation. His hatred for Dustless is as deep as the sea. Since he became famous in the second half of his life, the biggest loss he suffered was in the hands of Dustless. If it was really a simple competition of strength, he would have lost. After all, his skills were not as good as others, but he was defeated by Dustless's despicable means of Genjutsu. 100 Beast Kaido, do you still think you can defeat me? Looking at the enraptured Kaido, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head, and he was too lazy to talk nonsense. His dark pupils began to change sharply. Eyes that had never been seen before were exposed to Kaido's sight. Chapter 530. Kaido looked at Dustless's eyes unexpectedly. He didn't expect this guy to have other eyes, especially after he was defeated by Dustless. He listed the latter in the list of dangerous people, and his danger index is even higher than Whitebeard. Think about it, a person with a higher danger index than Whitebeard. How can his dojutsu be a trick to deceive people? Remembering the miserable scene after the Jinjutsu that day, Kaido closed his eyes in an orderly manner and no longer looked at Dustless's eyes. Thinking of the elusive Jinjutsu, Kaido's heart was unusually heavy. Unknowingly, he will be pulled into the nightmare world if he doesn't pay attention. Your limbs are well developed, and your brain works very fast, but I'm afraid you will be disappointed. This is not the eye I used before, but compared to the Sharingan I used last time, this eye is much more terrifying. Dustless's left eye suddenly turned into a mysterious purple eye, and in the eye socket, a black coil spread, and a circle of ripples was clearly visible. It is Rinnegan Sharingan. What kind of witchcraft do you have? With a snort, Kaido continued to close his eyes without fear. In fact, fighting with closed eyes or open eyes is the same for him. Kaido, whose observation haki is already unfathomable, doesn't need to rely on pure vision to fight. Jinjutsu can deceive the eyes, but it can't deceive observation haki. Compared to Jinjutsu, I'm actually better at attacking. Dustless raised his eyelids and stared at Kaido, who was on guard, and answered truthfully. His voice fell, without waiting for Kaido to answer. He raised his right hand and locked his position, and a black hole appeared under his hand, and then a majestic and oppressive suction force came out. 10,000 mammoth heaven pull. A strong gravitational force suddenly enveloped him, and his body floated up. Aware of the abnormality of his body, Kaido's old face suddenly collapsed and became extremely ugly. The whole person seemed to have lost the restriction of gravity, floating uncontrollably, and it was extremely difficult to maintain the balance of the body, let alone launch an attack on Dustless. Even so, Kaido gritted his teeth and continued to persist. He was not a person who gave up easily, and he tried to control the balance of his body and try to stabilize. You still want to struggle at this point? Naive. Dustless said coldly with a sneer on his face. The biggest advantage of ninjutsu is its strangeness and diversity, especially for people like Kaido who don't know anything about it. It's very difficult to deal with. Get over here. As Dustless' voice fell, the gravitational force in his palm became even more violent. Kaido, who was still struggling, was suddenly pulled over by brute force. Bastard, die. Kaido flew into a rage out of humiliation when he saw that he couldn't get rid of the gravitational force. He switched from defense to offense and punched towards Dustless's head along with the force of gravity. However, although the idea was good, the reality was extremely cruel. Shinra Tensei, the whole person was about to approach Wu Chun. The fist covered with armament haki was about to hit him when a strong repulsive force broke out without warning. Kaido, who was caught off guard, was instantly sent flying by Shuai. As he flew backward, he cut through many large trees, manipulating gravity and repulsion. How many abilities does this guy have? After a long while, Kaido stood up and scathed. He thought of Wu Chen's countless and endless trump cards. He sighed with emotion. Every ability of Wu Chun was an incredible ability that made others envious. The person in front of him is like the illegitimate son of God, with all the advantages. The strength of gravity and repulsion is not very strong. If I am prepared in advance, I should be able to avoid it. Kaido's face was full of light as he accurately analyzed. He is a veteran of the battlefield. After many years of fighting, he has developed a mind that is good at thinking. After figuring out the enemy's ability, he gives a fatal attack. This is his principle of winning. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be victorious in every battle. Katan, Grand Fire Annihilation. The blue sky was instantly dyed red. Looking up, he saw an overwhelming wave of fire coming toward him, and the terrible diameter reached a terrifying range of tens of meters. Kaido's old face changed slightly, and he even suspected that if it weren't for the existence of Doflamingo, the whole island would be covered by this fierce flame. No matter when flames were the natural enemy of all things in the world. The boiling torrent was unstoppable, and it easily scorched the ground. The vegetation in the surroundings was instantly reduced to ashes, and they transformed into bursts of dust that were blown away by the wind. Even so, it couldn't destroy Kaido. His whole person was swallowed by the flame, but he stood still. How can this kind of fire kill me? Kaido walked out of the flames with a contemptuous tone. At this moment, his whole body was covered with armament haki, and his whole body was pulsing with a threatening light. His strong physique was visible and full of explosive power. Even if the surrounding flames were swallowing Kaido's body, the temperature was not enough to melt him. The level of haki varies from person to person, and there is no limit. The strong are strong, and the weak are weak. For example, Doflamingo, in the face of such a terrible flame, it won't be long before he is swallowed and annihilated. Clang, clang, clang. Clapping his hands, there was a burst of crisp sound of steel. 100 Beast Kaido's dark face was full of ridicule, and the sarcasm in his tone was undisguised. No matter how strange your ability is, as long as I enter the state of armament haki, you can't hurt me. Kaido showed confidence. Armament haki can defend against any physical attack, and observation haki is enough to avoid any strange ability. This is his confidence in facing Dustless. Little did he know, Dustless's mouth swept a strange smile, and his eyes were staring at Kaido. It seemed that he saw Kaido's embarrassed look, and his sneer became more obvious. Kaido, who has a deep understanding of observation haki, suddenly realized that something was wrong, and his hair stood up, and he instinctively felt that something was wrong. Chapter 531. In such a hot environment, Kaido's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. He didn't dare to be careless. His nerves have always been in a high-density state of concentration, on guard against Dustless's every move. In a fight between masters, victory or defeat is often in a short period of time, especially the enemy at present, for Kaido, is the strongest enemy in his life. 100 Beast Kaido knows nothing about Dustless, but Dustless is quite familiar with him, so he is already at a disadvantage. If he is careless, his pirate career may come to an end. Since you don't come over, then I will attack. Seeing Kaido not move for a long time, Dustless changed from defense to offense and rushed out. The Rinnegan in his left eye rotated rapidly, jumping out with strong energy fluctuations. Fortunately, he appeared early, otherwise I would have Doflamingo, who was secretly watching the battle from afar, shuddered. He couldn't help but be stunned when he saw this exaggerated fight. If Dustless had appeared for just a second less, he might have been crushed into pieces by Kaido at that time. Seeing Kaido's strength, Doflamingo couldn't help but laugh at himself. How ignorant and ridiculous his previous idea was. He thought that he was only a line away from the Yonko for emperors, but now it seems that the gap is completely different. The so-called Shichibukai and Yonko for emperors are not comparable at all. It is even said that the two sides are one-sided. Apart from Hawkeye, there is no Shichibukai that can fight against Yonko for emperors. Boom, boom, boom. Accompanied by an ear-piercing roar, a large, deep pit appeared out of thin air on the flat ground. In the fierce battle between Kaido and Dustless, the slightest collision also produced strong sparks, which then turned into fierce shock waves that spread out, rewriting the surrounding geographical environment. Countless dense cracks on the ground are clearly visible. Some of them are enough to swallow and annihilate an adult human. This kind of crack is not unique, and there are countless of them. Gulp. Seeing this, Doflamingo began to think of retreating. Even if he was unwilling, the cruel reality of the current dangerous situation told him that this battle was not something he could interfere in. Now, he had the will, but he was powerless. His body was covered in wounds, and he was already on the verge of death. Whether he can survive or not is a problem, let alone intervene in the battle between Kaido and Dustless. Go to hell. Observation hockey locked on Dustless's every move. Looking at the temporary loopholes in Dustless's body, Kaido's killing intent burst out in an instant. The dark iron fist broke out with full strength. The condensed strength is enough to blow up a large building in an instant. Shinra Tensei, hugging the sky with both hands, an unstoppable repulsive force erupted, forming a 360-degree absolute defense. The destructive airwaves were extremely sturdy. Don't think that one move. Seeing Dustless using the same trick, Kaido sneered again and again. His huge body suddenly jumped up and then fell down. Using the falling force, he smashed towards Dustless. Looking up at the falling 100-beast Kaido, the sky darkened, and the sunlight shining from thousands of miles high was blocked by his wide body. Boom! Ka-ka-ka! Shinra Tensei, known as the Absolute Defense, collapsed in the blink of an eye. Extremely fragile, the fist that was enough to crush a mountain fell on Dustless's head. Boom, boom, boom. Kaido fell down with the force of the dive. The moment he hit the ground, the whole island trembled violently. The ground was as fragile as paper, and Kaido wantonly played with it. Are you kidding me? Am I dazzled? You idiot. This is the strength of Yonko for emperors. It's nothing to be surprised about. The captain has destroyed more than one island. It's nothing to be surprised about. The island is slowly sinking. The Kaido pirates on the coast were shocked. Their eyes were fixed on the slowly sinking island, and they couldn't help but gasp. The only ones who could remain calm were the pirates who followed Kaido in the early days. Master, this scale of battle is beyond imagination. We should take advantage of this opportunity to escape. On the Tang Jike pirate ship, Doflamingo was struggling to look at the slowly sinking island in the distance. Just now, he was saved by his bodyguard, Balfour, who had the rotating fruit. Waving his hand, Doflamingo stopped them from retreating. This is a rare battle. Open your eyes, learn more, and don't be a frog in the well. Doflamingo's tone was impassioned, and his bruises couldn't stop his heart from throbbing. He had suffered since childhood, and he had an almost obsessive pursuit of strength. This should be enough to kill you, so I should retreat. In a large, deep pit, the wind and sand were all over the sky, and the visibility was less than 2 meters. Kaido was panting and slightly tired. His observation haki spread out, and the wind and grass around him couldn't escape Kaido's perception. Dustless's breath had completely disappeared. After spending so much effort, I finally got rid of that annoying fly. 100-beast Kaido said in a relaxed manner. The nightmare that had shrouded his heart also disappeared. Pucci, without waiting for Kaido to be proud, a severe burning pain poured into his heart, and from his chest to his limbs, Kaido groaned, and his face was as pale as paper. His eyes widened, and his body hidden in the sand. In a trance, Kaido saw Dustless's figure. I should have told you before, defeating me is just your wishful thinking, and the reality is like this. Wuchen, who was holding the first-generation Ghost Blade, walked out of the sandstorm. His whole body was surrounded by a bloody light. The demonic aura that was so deep that it wanted to crush the world made Kaido's nerves tense up uncontrollably. The deep blood stain on his chest was caused by it. Kaido was not an idiot, and the world knew that there was such a strong demon energy, and only the legendary weapon could reach this level. Chapter 532. As a top pirate in the New World, Kaido is also well-informed. Such a suppressive and chilling monster aura can only be felt by the legendary First Ghost Blade. Among the 12 Wazaquando swords, only the first Ghost Blade has such a peerless edge and a monster aura that makes people breathless. No, what means did this guy just use to escape the perception of Kimbin Shoka? Touching his strong chest covered with blood, 100 Beast Kaido speculated. At the moment when he was attacked by Dustless, it was as if he appeared out of thin air and suddenly drilled out of the void. Well, this kind of weak attack I have suffered many times in my life. Glancing at Dustless with disdain, the wound on Kaido's chest slowly recovered. Only a slender trace was left on the chest of a strong physique. Look carefully. In my life, I've received countless wounds of all kinds, but I've still survived. Not only that, but I also got the title of the world's strongest creature, Kaido said proudly. And at the same time, he raised his arm, and countless wounds were clearly visible. It's an interesting ability. Seeing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded secretly. Kaido's expression changed, and he also saw it. Although the change in his face was only temporary, it still couldn't escape Dustless's sharp eyes, and the corner of his mouth outlined a hidden smile. Every time he healed his wounds, Kaido's face would be a little pale and weak. Although it was fleeting, Dustless still keenly captured it. In fact, the previous series of warm-up was also a deliberate test. During this period, every time Kaido healed his wounds, the more deadly the wound, the paler and weaker his face would be. Healing the body actually consumes physical strength indirectly, and the heavier the wound, the more physical strength it consumes. In the long run, Kaido can't afford it. I've split you into 4 or 5 pieces. I don't know if you can heal. Touching his clean chin, he stared at Kaido and asked. Dustless's sharp eyes locked onto Kaido's heart. His face was dark and cruel, and the killing intent in his bones was not concealed at all. Affected by Dustless's killing intent, the first-generation Ghost Blade in his hand cried out in excitement, and a dense killing intent rushed towards Kaido. Hearing this, Kaido's expression froze, and then he said without showing any weakness, "If it works, you can give it a try." His eyes, which were even bigger than Tong Ling, stared at Dustless. Kaido was full of confidence. This time, he didn't dare to be careless. His body became extremely bright and dazzling. Kaido did not hesitate to enter armament haki hardening again, escaping the perception of observation haki. If I'm not mistaken, it may be the ability to move through space. Fuck, does this kid have a devil fruit tree at home, eating all kinds of fruits? Even if he moves at the speed of light, he can't escape the perception of observation haki. Now Dustless is like a ghost that comes and goes without a trace. Kaido can only think of it as the ability of space. The habits and style of pirates are extremely bad, and when they get angry, they are even more unrestrained. Swearing is a way for pirates to vent their dissatisfaction. Against Dustless, 100 Beast Kaido has been holding back his anger for a long time, and his dazzling ability is really a headache. Whiz. Regardless of Kaido who was daydreaming, Wu-chan raised his saber and waved his hand to release a blood-red chop. It crushed Kaido through all the thistles and thorns. Don't underestimate me. His eyes emitted a cold light. Facing such a threatening cold light, Kaido didn't retreat. Instead, he rushed forward like a fierce tiger. Boom! The iron fist condensed all the strength of the whole body blasted out, and the bloody light was suddenly dismembered, and the scattered hurricane pulled out messy cracks on the ground, as simple as cutting tofu. Bang, bang, bang. Kaido made threatening gestures as he dashed forward. Due to his immense strength, every step he took caused the ground to tremble. You are really worthy of admiration. Wu-chan nodded slightly as he carefully sized up Kaido, who was coming toward him. Then, his expression became as cold as a knife. He also rushed straight out without fear. Boom, boom, boom. The intense collision continued. The fight between the two of them had already surpassed the understanding of humans. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Sand and stones were blown away. Even the air was rumbling from the collision. It was extremely hot. Others are worried about the identity of Dustless and Flamingo, but Kaido naturally has no scruples. The identity of Tenzin has no effect on him, and only the one with the biggest fist is the final winner. Pucci, with the sound of flesh being cut, Kaido's skin suddenly had a bloody mark, but the next second the bloody wound healed. Whoosh! Dustless suddenly stepped back and pulled a distance away from Kaido, and his eyes narrowed, using some means to stimulate the growth process of the cells to increase all aspects of the body. Dustless guessed that this method can even achieve the amazing effect of limb regeneration, but the side effects are also very big. First of all, the physical strength is unbearable. It seems that the conventional method is useless. Dustless stared at Kaido's chest, and the Rinnegan Sharingan in his left eye rotated rapidly, and a majestic eye power flooded out. The focus of Dustless's eyes was on Kaido. Boom, boom, boom. Without warning, a strong repulsive force exploded, and the center of the explosion was in front of Kaido. The sudden impact easily affected Kaido, and there was no way for him to escape, and he was thrown hundreds of meters away in an instant. The exaggerated repulsive force covered the whole island, and the slowly sinking island was swallowed by the sea at a faster speed. Being hit by Mahabharata, this should be enough. Dustless stared at Kaido, who couldn't stand in the distance, and said with a smile, "The principle of Mahabharata is similar to Super Shinra Tensei, and the biggest difference is that through Dustless's sight, he can choose the place to throw at will." Chapter 533. Kaido was lying on the ground half dead. His breathing was weak. Due to the gradual loss of vitality, a sense of powerlessness spread all over his body, and it was no longer enough to maintain the state of armament hockey. Kaido, who was in a trance, saw the miserable appearance of the future. He was covered in blood and wounds all over his body, and he was lifted in the air like an ant. The initiator was Dustless. "I can't die yet." Kaido's old eyes emitted a cold luster, and his face was full of madness. He had been sailing the sea for so many years. How could he die in such a small, sinking island? "Can't die. Who do you think can save you?" A contemptuous voice sounded in Kaido's ears, with ridicule and naked contempt. He couldn't even move his body, and he was still delusional. Looking at the voice, it was Dustless. Looking up and staring at the figure that suddenly flashed, Kaido's eyes were filled with murderous intent again. He stared fiercely at Dustless. If eyes could kill, at this moment, he would be full of holes and turned into a stick. "It seems that this is the end." Looking down at the bloody Kaido, Dustless said indifferently. His cold tone was as cold as frost, and he looked at Kaido's eyes without any human emotions. In Dustless's eyes, Kaido was already a corpse. Can he still be repaired? But it seems that no matter how much he can be repaired, he is already at the end of his rope. The wound in front of his eyes was slowly healing. The bloody wound had once again coagulated, leaving behind an ugly scar. Even so, the healing speed was much slower than before, completely at the speed of a tortoise. Kaido was also panting heavily. His coarse old face was pale and covered in sweat. You want to turn around when you're at the end of your rope? It's not suitable to daydream in broad daylight. Staring at Kaido, who continued to stand up, Dustless frowned. This kid's vitality shouldn't be so strong that he could stand up after being beaten twice. The blow just now had crushed all the bones in Kaido's body, and his internal organs were dislocated, but he didn't expect this old guy to stand up. Of course, it could also be understood in another way. Driven by his undying desire, Kaido gritted his teeth and continued to fight. "I'm sorry, I just like to daydream." Even though he was seriously injured, Kaido did not show any weakness and chose to retort sharply. Any struggle is futile. Seeing that Kaido continued to stand up, Dustless kindly advised him softly. Since he was going to die anyway, there was no need for him to suffer. He might as well die peacefully. "You want me to quietly wait for my death? You're not qualified." Kaido snorted disdainfully. At the same time, he grinned, revealing a sinister smile. A cunning light flickered in the corner of his eyes. Glancing at Kaido, Dustless was unusually calm. In the face of absolute strength, any ability, including conspiracy and trickery, had little effect. A plan thought up by a mere beast was not even worth mentioning. Use whatever means you have. Dustless taunted Kaido with his index finger. Sometimes, watching a clown's confident performance could be considered a good entertainment. At the very least, it would add some joy to the ordinary and boring life. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me and purify the atmosphere of mankind. You alone stink the entire human race. Kaido's eyes were as sharp as lightning. From Dustless's playful eyes, he sensed a kind of contempt, so he immediately used his mouth to attack. Dustless heard this without any expression, and his eyes were as calm as stagnant water. There was no need to argue with a dying man. Whoosh! Using all his strength, Kaido jumped dozens of meters into the sky, then turned around and slammed into the ground like a meteor. I was quite looking forward to it, but it turned out to be the same old trick. Looking up at the falling Kaido, a deep sense of disappointment flashed in his eyes. With the help of the falling force, he could indeed strengthen his attack, and the power could even flatten the island. But if he wanted to shake Dustless, it was still insufficient. Stupid. Dustless's lips curled into a sinister smile. When a human fell from the sky, it was very difficult for them to control their body as they wished due to the loss of balance. In other words, Kaido was now a living target. The tip of his thumb condensed a golden luster and aimed at Kaido's heart. Kaido wanted to use his own body to test the strength of Dustless' attack, so he naturally would not show any mercy. Laser! A golden beam of light shot out from Dustless' thumb, rising from the ground and shooting straight at Kaido, who was falling from the sky. A sharp light that could pierce through everything rumbled out. Pucci! Blood splattered in the air. A scorched wound suddenly appeared on Kaido's heart, and blood flowed uncontrollably from his throat. Even so, Kaido's expression did not change as he swooped down towards the island. Looking up at Kaido's coarse old face and hysterical madness, Dustless had a flash of inspiration. He seemed to understand what this kid was planning. This bastard. It seems that he wants to sink this island and perish together with me. Dustless could not help but sweat for Kaido's madness. He really wanted to know why this kid was so daring. After sinking the entire island, he would not be able to stand on it. Kaido himself would also be swallowed by the sea. Everyone knew that there was only one fate for a devil fruit user who fell into the sea. Hee. You finally understand my plan? Hee. Kaido's unbridled laughter resounded through the sky, venting the bitterness in his heart for a long time. Fighting with Dustless could be said to be the biggest shame in the sea's life. He was almost completely suppressed and beaten up. After about a while, Kaido's wild laughter stopped. He looked at Dustless again. He originally thought that Dustless would show a panicked expression, but the latter was uncharacteristically calm. There was even ridicule in his eyes. There are countless people who want to perish together with me, but only one can do it. Moreover, you will face the same fate as them. Stepping into hell is your destiny. Chapter 534. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There are many people who want his life or indirectly want to die with him, such as Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Uchiha Bido. They all want to die with Dustless, but in the end, they all set themselves on fire. Now Kaido also wants to play the same game, damn it. The ideal is beautiful, but the reality is very cruel. A mere monkey wants to shake the world. There is only one end, and that is self-destruction. The chakra in Dustless's body began to go berserk, and just when he was about to crush Kaido's conspiracy, a flash of light suddenly flashed in his mind, and the chakra also went berserk. If one of the Yonko, for emperors, is drowned, the news will be very explosive. The leader of the pirates, 100 Beast Kaido, was choked to death by seawater. His corpse floated in the sea. This funny way of dying was more interesting than killing him. At this time, Kaido's whole body also hit the ground, setting off a sandstorm of several feet high. And even because of the terrifying power, the surrounding mountains had narrow and long cracks visible to the naked eye, faintly showing signs of splitting and collapsing. Boom! 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 The powerful force hit the island, and the originally slowly sinking island swayed from side to side at this moment. The hidden volcano under the ground was violently impacted and suddenly erupted, and the whole island was eroded. At the center of the island, a huge pit appeared, and at first, only a small stream of water came out from the ground, and the seeping water was only a small stream, which was negligible. But finally, with the awakening of the dormant volcano, the whole island was changed unscrupulously, and the weak stream became stormy waves. The change of the geographical environment caused many holes to appear, and countless seawater spurted out from these cracks, and the speed of the island's sinking was beyond expectations. Now, even if that kid has a lot of means, he will definitely die, Kaido said with an evil smile, and his tone was full of endless pride and satisfaction. At the same time, Kaido's body also underwent earth-shaking changes, and he swam in a strange posture in the water, but the seawater didn't affect him at all. Is this your last card? I didn't expect your ability to be so magical. You can change into other creatures according to your will. It's really an incredible ability. Deep in the sea, Dustless suddenly appeared in front of a strange shark, and his words were full of surprise. This ugly creature is Kaido. What's so surprising? You're so naive. The huge mouth full of fangs spoke in human language, and a horrifying voice came out. It said proudly, "As you can see, this is one of my many abilities. Any creature in the sea, land, or air can be transformed with my will. Otherwise, where do you think my name, 100 Beasts, came from?" Kaido, who turned into a shark, his devil's fruit, was very proud. His devil fruit ability is so powerful. He can change any creature he sees, and can change it according to his will's will. Even in the sea, he could turn into a shark and move stealthily, and he had more advantages than on land. This was also one of the reasons why he was known as the strongest creature in the sea, land, and air. No matter when or where, he could change into the most advantageous form to fight, and he had an extremely strong geographical adaptability. Dustless slightly nodded and didn't deny it. This strange appearance in front of him is a bit shocking and a bit out of the ordinary because the Zoan ability user can turn into an animal. The only difference is that Kaido can change into any creature according to his will. You bastard, you were eroded by the seawater, but you didn't show any discomfort. Kaido, who turned into a super large shark, said with a gloomy face. His big eyes were full of disbelief. How can a devil fruit ability user not be affected by the seawater? This kind of mythical story happened in front of him. How can he not be surprised? Dustless shrugged. He can only sigh. The system's products must be the best. Because the nature of the system's existence is a manifestation of escaping the laws of heaven and earth. The things it gave out naturally can't be treated with common sense. The so-called seawater and sea stone are useless to him. Chat is over. Dustless's face converged and was replaced by killing intent. The water around him changed according to his will, and his face was full of ridicule. Just a beast. Do you think you can do whatever you want in the sea by turning into a shark? I advise you not to take any chances. This kind of naive and ridiculous idea is fatal. Hearing this, Kaido, who turned into a shark, sneered and was about to open his mouth to attack Dustless, but the latter's figure disappeared like a ghost. Above the cloudless sky, Dustless floated quietly, overlooking the disappearing island below, and the Kaido pirates who haven't escaped yet. The killing intent in his eyes was clear. Suddenly, the sky was gloomy, and an unprecedented shadow covered the sky and the ground, covering the sea below. Looking up, he saw a meteorite with a size of tens of kilometers floating above Dustless's head. The great waves will wash away the sand. Whether or not you can escape will depend on your luck. As Dustless's voice fell, the super-large meteorites floating above his head lost control and fell out of thin air. These meteorites were attracted from outer space by Dustless through the Tensigan, and the impact of hitting the sea is self-evident. White Zetsu, what's the situation with Mariewa? Looking at the falling meteorites, Dustless closed his eyes and communicated with White Zetsu. On the other side, the Edo Tensigan army was also besieging Mariewa. How else can it be? That group of minions was easily suppressed by the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. White Zetsu said helplessly. Hearing this, Dustless frowned slightly. Those Edo Tensigan were all strong people in this world. Most of them were at the Vice Admiral level. Even if they barely reached the Admiral level, they fell to the Vice Admiral level because of the Edo Tensigan. But their biggest advantage was not their strength, but their immortal body. Before Dustless could ask why, White Zetsu's voice sounded in advance. The native power of this world really can't be underestimated. The truth that science can change everything is true. Chapter 535. Dustless, who was floating in the sky, looked stiff and gloomy. White Zetsu was an existence he created himself. The probability of betraying him or lying to him is 0. Science can change everything. This strange idea is a fantasy for people like Dustless who believe that strength is above everything. Tell me the details. With a hint of killing intent in his tone, Wu Chan asked in an unquestionable tone. White Zetsu wouldn't dare to fabricate something out of thin air. Hearing the killing intent in Dustless's tone, White Zetsu's tone was also restrained. If he made a joke while Dustless was in a rage, the consequences were definitely not something he could bear. This hesitation flashed in his tone. Remembering Dustless's cold tone, White Zetsu gritted his teeth and said, I also understand the specifics. In short, the Edo Tensei is controlled by Vegapunk's invention and is bound to a very small environment. Baiju said solemnly. His tone was filled with disbelief. However, that was the truth. He couldn't deny it. The army of the Edo Tensei is bound in a cage by Vegapunk's invention, and the hard wall can't be broken no matter how hard it is. Vegapunk? Thinking of the fat scientist with an unflattering appearance, Dustless's dissatisfaction disappeared in a flash, and he became interested for a while. Vegapunk is the chief scientist of the Navy and the government. He has created and invented countless things in his life, and all kinds of strange designs are also fantastical. He even created a strange life like the artificial dragon. In short, Vegapunk is a very intelligent person, and his inventions are also very practical. Maybe I used to underestimate the scientific theory of this world. Dustless floating in the sky was gloomy, and he opened his eyes solemnly. The legendary ancient weapon Pluto is a product of science. Even according to Dustless's speculation, the Heavenly King is a similarly large space battleship. Forget it. I will go and see it myself. Dustless said softly after cutting off the connection with White Zetsu. He was a little curious about the peerless genius Vegapunk, and he suddenly had the idea of capturing him for his own use. Caesar is good, but he is still far behind Vegapunk. Boom, boom, boom. The meteorite, which was tens of kilometers in size, slowly fell into the sea, creating huge ripples on the surface of the sea. These guys are really cunning. They know how to plan for a rainy day. Narrowing his eyes slightly, Dustless showed a rare expression of appreciation. Although many of the Kaido Pirate Regiment's battleships were hit by meteorites, there were still some who escaped, and this group of people was extremely smart. They knew that they would be attacked by Dustless if they sailed carelessly on the sea. So they prepared the coating tools in their previous inventory and urgently coated the hull with film, and then dived into the depths of the sea. Do you think this little bit of cleverness will work? How laughable. Dustless shook his head in disdain. The blue sky darkened once again, and a meteor the same size as the one before descended upon Dustless's head. There are countless meteorites in outer space. The eye power of Tensigan can even control the moon. These sesame mung bean-sized meteorites are naturally easy for Wuchen to use, and there is no pressure at all. If you can still live like this, it really means that your life is not meant to end, Kaido. With a slight wave of her white and tender little hand, the huge meteorite also fell, slowly falling into the sea. The target is Kaido and his crew in the depths of the sea. In the face of such a large meteorite attack, if the Kaido pirate regiment can still escape, it can only be said that God favors them. And these guys really know how to pick the right time. They always appear at such a coincidental time. The Navy always stands at the best angle to reap the benefits of others. Looking as far as the eye can see, the super-large fleet dozens of kilometers away is slowly approaching, and the unique marine battleships and special flags are clearly visible. Dustless, with his extremely abnormal vision, can even see the marine hero Garp on the platform turret, wearing the Justice cloak. Obviously, he is the leader this time. The Kaido pirate regiment's chances of survival are slim. Because of the special reason of the emergency coding, they didn't have enough preparation. In about half an hour, they need to float to the surface of the sea to fill with oxygen. Otherwise, the entire fleet will be buried in the depths of the sea due to suffocation. Mariewa, at the moment, is a different sign. Due to the sudden attack of the Edo Tensei army, the entire Mariewa is almost in ruins. There are countless strong people gathered in Mariewa, and there are many Vice Admiral level characters and some with strength comparable to Admiral occasionally pass by. But in the face of the Edo Tensei army with an immortal body, they can only look and sigh. The powerful and strange body, no matter how many times it is destroyed and crushed, will be repaired again without limit. And this group of human beings is constantly consuming their physical strength. So the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, the secret card designed by Vegapunk a few years ago, finally bound this group of monsters, but it still can't kill them. It can only restrict their movements. No wonder the Edo Tensei army can't break through. According to their strength, it is indeed impossible. Staring at the huge cage in the distance, the doubts in Dustless's eyes disappeared, and he nodded slightly. Breaking through it with the strength of a vice admiral is indeed a fool's dream. During the War of the Best, the Marine also surrounded the Whitebeard pirates with this thing, restricting them to a narrow range of space, and then Admiral Akainu launched the unique skill Meteor Volcano to annihilate them. With these special mysterious substances in front of him, even Whitebeard can't break his defense, let alone this group of Vice Admiral-level Edo Tensei army. Chapter 536. What he saw was a cage composed of countless white walls. It was several meters high, and the surface was extremely smooth. There was no possibility of climbing. Above, it was a group of important members of the world government. They stared at the reincarnated Edo Tensei army in the cage in surprise. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Some of the people who had fallen had fought side by side with them. The cage included the former Navy Fleet Admiral, the current world government Commander Kong. Touching his chin, he looked down at the reincarnated Edo Tensei army in the cage. His eyes flashed with regret and killing intent, and from time to time, there was a flash of brilliance in his eyes. Playing with the flesh of the dead, the controller behind is so despicable and cold. Admiral Kong's killing intent was awe-inspiring, and the chill in his mouth froze the air in front of him. It was no wonder that he was so angry. Among these undead army, there were people from the same era as him, and they even carried out missions together in some periods. Commander Kong, it's meaningless to be angry now. I know you're very sad, and I feel the same way. My former companions are among these walking corpses. The fat, strange-looking figure beside him said. Looking closely, this person was the guest of honor of the world government, Vegapunk. The most important plot at the moment should be to discuss how to clean up this group of people who have died. They've been killed and injured once, and they will be killed and injured again in the future. I'm sorry, Vegapunk said with complex emotions, and his tone was apologetic. Among these reincarnated Edo Tensei army, there were many scientists who helped him in the past. He didn't expect to be able to meet his old friends again today, but in such a complicated and awkward situation. You're right, Professor. Right now, we need to discuss how to deal with this group of undying zombies. The other problems are not important. Otherwise, the 5 of them will find trouble with me. Marshal Kong nodded his head seriously. His tone was humble, and there was no sense of superiority at all. Because even if Vegapunk's hands were weak, the power exerted by his brain was far more useful than him, the commander of the army. The commander of the army could be replaced by another one, but Vegapunk was the only one in the world. A scientist will always be a scientist, with a complicated and lost sigh. Looking at his reincarnated companions below, Admiral Kong had mixed feelings. At the same time, he sneered at Vegapunk next to him. Among these dead people, many of them were used as human subjects for his experiments. What bullsh asterisk T number 1 scientist? He's actually no different from that executioner Caesar. Glancing at the fanatical Vegapunk, Soren cursed in his heart. Without even thinking about it, Commander Kong knew that once these reincarnated dead people fell into the hands of Vegapunk, they would be pushed to the operating table for dissection. The only difference between Caesar and Vegapunk was that the former used civilians for experiments, while Vegapunk used prisoners for experiments. It was not difficult to tell that these dead people had lost their consciousness from their screams. If they fell into the hands of Vegapunk, he would be even more unscrupulous. If these people could be used by the government, it's just a matter of time before the pirates of the world are defeated. Fleet Admiral Kong said with a little longing in his eyes. A team composed of a large number of immortal lieutenant generals could easily sweep across the world. Even the Yonko could only nurse a grievance. That's for sure. Vegapunk smiled with exultation, and his crazy laughter was crazy. Scientists are like this. Sometimes human ethics and secular bottom lines are worthless in their eyes, and sometimes they also talk about benevolence and righteousness, making a great image of saving the world. Just as Chief Commander Kong and Vegapunk were discussing how to deal with this group of Edo Tensei army, in the cage below, a certain crazy Edo Tensei army suddenly calmed down, as if it had regained consciousness, and its eyes had some clarity. This body is still so weak that it can't be complimented. Dustless, who was secretly controlling his consciousness, smiled with a tangled smile. His strength seemed to be all sealed, and he could only exert less than 1% of his body. Edo Tensei was not the 6 paths of pain, and it was not easy to control it for the first time, and his strength was greatly suppressed. It should be no problem to kill him at this distance. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked up at the top of the cage. Vegapunk, who was discussing with Admiral Kong, and his eyes flashed with a gloomy and piercing murderous intent. This Vegapunk's own strength is slag, but the power he exerts is countless times stronger than that of a Marine admiral, and it is extremely difficult to ignore him. Dustless quietly condensed power in his calf, and photons secretly surged between his calf. Relying on this fragile body, Dustless can't exert much strength. At most, he is equal to a vice admiral, and it is no problem to kill Vegapunk. After all, he is only immortal, and the inventions he creates are shocking, but his own strength is no different from normal human beings. Light speed kick. With a roar falling, the light condensed in his calf suddenly flew out and swept straight towards the place where Vegapunk and Admiral Kong were standing. Boom, boom, boom. The ear-piercing roar of the explosion resounded, and a huge fireball slowly rose into the air, and the destructive blazing heat waves spread and swept all of Mariewa. This damned wall is ridiculously hard. He thought that these cages that imprisoned the Edo Tensei army would be destroyed, but they only left scorching traces and some irregular depressions. He raised his eyebrows and then looked expectantly at the place where Vegapunk and Admiral Kong were standing. Admiral Kong was unscathed, but the clothes on his upper body had been torn, revealing a strong physique. As for Vegapunk, he was much more embarrassed. Go and call the doctor. Admiral Kong glared fiercely at the reincarnated dead in the cage and shouted at the government personnel around him. At this moment, Vegapunk was quite miserable. His right arm had been melted by the blazing heat, and his whole body was burned beyond recognition. He was only breathing weakly. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and Don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.